Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Mastered Shadow Bankai? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Prologue. A new beginning. The atmosphere in the Nara household was somber, a stillness that followed great loss. The faint smell of herbal tea filled the air, freshly brewed by Yoshino Nara as she prepared for an unexpected guest. Late in the evening, Jiraiya, the toad sage, stepped through the sliding door of the Nara estate, his expression a mix of sorrow and resolve. In his arms, bundled tightly in a blanket, was a sleeping infant with a patch of messy black hair. Shikaku Nara stood from his seat, his dark eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. Jiraiya shifted uncomfortably but held his ground, explaining that it was about Naruto. His voice was heavy, burdened with responsibility, as he spoke of Minato and Kushina, who were like family to him. With their passing, he felt unable to raise Naruto himself, believing the child needed stability that he could not provide. He trusted Shikaku and Yoshino to give him that. Shikaku processed the weight of the request quickly. He knew the child's cries would be a constant reminder of the Nine-Tails' rampage and the village's relentless hatred. Yet, when Jiraiya handed Naruto over, Shikaku did not hesitate, stating simply that the child was family too. Minato had been like a brother to him, and they would take him in. Yoshino entered from the adjacent room, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes softened at the sight of the infant, and her maternal instincts kicked in immediately. She gently cradled Naruto in her arms, assuring him that he was home now and that she would love him as if he were her own. Jiraiya watched the tender moment, relief washing over him. He followed Shikaku to a quieter corner of the room where the two men sat opposite each other. Shikaku, ever the tactician, cut straight to the point, asking if Jiraiya would be part of Naruto's life. Jiraiya hesitated, looking down at his calloused hands, explaining that his work was not safe for the child and that Naruto deserved better. Shikaku leaned back, disappointment flickering in his eyes as he reminded Jiraiya that one day he would have to meet Naruto, hoping the boy would be willing to forgive him. Jiraiya had no reply. After a few moments of silence, he stood and gave one last look at the sleeping baby in Yoshino's arms before disappearing into the night. 4 years later, the sun was high over the Nara estate, its golden light filtering through the trees that bordered the yard. Laughter echoed across the open space as 4 children Naruto, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji played in the grass. Their giggles and shouts painted a picture of innocence, untouched by the burdens the adults carried. Naruto darted between his friends, holding a small wooden sword. He declared himself the great hero, saving the village. Ino, with her hands on her hips and a flower crown on her head, shot back that he wasn't strong enough to save himself. Shikamaru lounged under a tree, watching the chaos unfold, muttering that it was such a drag, though a small smile crept onto his face. Choji, munching on a bag of chips, held a stick like a makeshift spear, offering to be Naruto's sidekick. Naruto puffed out his chest, encouraging Choji and urging Shikamaru to join them. The children chased each other across the yard, their game evolving into a chaotic mix of roles and rules. Yoshino watched them from the doorway, a tray of drinks and snacks in her hands, calling for Shikaku to help her carry it. Shikaku sighed, earning chuckles from Inoichi and Choza as he complied. The men sat on the porch, watching their children play. The mood, light and jovial at first, grew darker as their conversation turned to Naruto. Inoichi lowered his voice, questioning the Hokage's decision to reveal Naruto's jinchūriki status to the village, noting that Kushina's had been kept a secret. Shikaku sighed, explaining that it wasn't Hiruzen's decision, Minato had wanted it this way, hoping Naruto would be seen as a hero rather than a monster. Choza frowned, commenting that Minato, despite being a genius, had made some questionable choices. Shikaku remained silent, his gaze fixed on Naruto, who was laughing as he tackled Shikamaru to the ground, murmuring that time would tell. As time passed, Naruto began to dream. In the darkness of his slumber, he often found himself standing before a massive cage, behind which red eyes glared at him, filled with malice and rage. The Nine-Tails' voice echoed in the void, taunting him about being nothing but a prison. But those weren't the only dreams. Sometimes, he found himself in a field of tall grass, the wind carrying the scent of flowers. A woman stood before him, her purple pigtails swaying in the breeze, wearing an eye patch over her right eye. She regarded him with a mix of annoyance and amusement, snapping at him for taking so long to arrive. Naruto would ask who she was, confused but intrigued. She would smirk, leaning down to ruffle his hair, telling him it was for him to figure out while inviting him to play games. They would engage in hide and seek, tag, or odd games with strange rules he didn't fully understand. Though her words were sharp, her actions were gentle, and Naruto felt safe in her presence. As Naruto grew older, the dreams became more vivid, and fragments of memories began to surface. He remembered battles, laughter, and pain. He recalled standing with a sword in hand, shadows swirling at his feet, and he remembered her, always at his side Katen. Though he didn't yet understand the connection, Naruto knew one thing: the woman in his dreams was important. As his bond with her grew, so too did his resolve to uncover the truth about himself and the power he carried within. Thus began the tale of Naruto Nara, a boy raised in the shadow of loss, surrounded by love, and destined for greatness. Chapter 1. Shadows and Games. The Nara estate was alive with laughter and playful shouts, the sounds of childhood joy filling the serene forest surrounding their home. Naruto sprinted through the courtyard, his wooden sword brandished like a knight's blade, while Shikamaru trailed behind, feigning annoyance. Naruto urged Shikamaru to embrace his role as the evil overlord, darting behind a tree with a grin. Shikamaru sighed, lazily swinging a stick and lamenting how troublesome it all was. Naruto often found himself wondering why he always had to be the bad guy. Ino, with her hands on her hips, chimed in, observing the chaos around them. She pointed out that he was simply too smart to take on the role of the hero. Choji added to the playful banter, pretending to cast a spell as he declared himself the wizard helping Naruto defeat Shikamaru, the villain. Naruto emerged from his hiding spot, brandishing a wooden sword dramatically, declaring that the evil overlord's reign of terror would end there. The game quickly turned into a whirlwind of laughter, chasing, and tumbles into the grass, with other Nara children joining in. They split into teams, switching between hero and villain roles, their imaginations transforming the estate into a grand battlefield. Yoshino, watching from the porch while folding laundry, smiled at the scene. She noted that at least they were burning off energy, shaking her head as Naruto tripped over a root but quickly bounced back up, indignant. Shikaku, seated nearby, chuckled, remarking on their endless stamina, which made him tired just watching them. As the evenings settled in, the atmosphere turned quieter, filled with more thoughtful pursuits. Naruto and Shikamaru often joined Shikaku and other Nara clansmen for games of strategy. The gathering room was frequently adorned with shogi and go pieces. One evening, Naruto sat across from Shikaku, his face scrunched in concentration as he tried to predict his next move. Shikaku advised him not to overthink it, explaining that sometimes the simplest moves could have the most significant impact. Shikamaru, lounging nearby, added that Naruto was trying too hard and should let the game flow. Naruto grumbled in response, acknowledging Shikamaru's experience in the game. Asuma Sarutobi, who often visited for games and conversation, leaned against the doorframe, observing the match. He noted that Naruto had potential, already surpassing many adults in Go. Naruto beamed at the compliment, but his focus remained on the board. He cherished these games, not just for the challenge but for the chance to bond with Shikaku and Asuma. By the time Naruto turned 6, his days were no longer just filled with games. Like all Nara children, he began training in the clan's unique shadow-based techniques. The training was rigorous, demanding patience and precision, but Naruto approached it with his usual enthusiasm. During a lesson, Shikaku explained that the shadow possession jutsu was not about brute force but about control and understanding the flow of battle. Naruto mimicked Shikaku's hand signs, focusing his chakra into his shadow, which stretched toward a training dummy. With encouragement from Shikaku, Naruto successfully latched his shadow onto the dummy, grinning triumphantly. Shikaku praised him but instructed him to repeat the technique 10 more times. Despite his laid-back personality, Naruto was determined to master the skill. On weekends, Naruto often walked through the village with Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji. The four were inseparable, their bond as strong as any team of shinobi. The streets bustled with merchants and villagers, but as Naruto passed, the friendly chatter turned to whispers. He felt the weight of their glares and the unspoken accusations in their eyes. However, he remained calm and indifferent, knowing the reasons behind their disdain. Instead of letting it bother him, it only fueled his resolve to prove them wrong. Ino, noticing his demeanor, asked if he was okay. He smiled and assured her that he was fine, suggesting they continue their walk. At the academy, Naruto's laid-back attitude remained unchanged. He rarely raised his hand in class, often lounging in his seat with a bored expression. Yet, his natural intelligence shone through in surprising moments. Irika Yumino, his instructor, often found himself torn between frustration and admiration when he caught Naruto staring out the window. When asked if he was paying attention, Naruto turned back with a lazy grin, accurately summarizing the lesson on chakra flow. His classmates responded with laughter and astonishment at his unexpected insight. Although he avoided competition, Naruto's relaxed demeanor concealed a sharp mind that excelled when it mattered most. Naruto's resemblance to Shunsui extended beyond their shared abilities. He possessed a mischievous streak that occasionally surfaced in his interactions. While he wasn't openly inappropriate, Yoshino quickly noticed the sly glances he sometimes gave the older kunoichi in the village. One day, she caught him looking a little too long at a passing market vendor and scolded him to keep his eyes forward. Naruto chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his head and apologizing. He made an effort to keep his habits in check, though Shikamaru occasionally teased him about it. The foundations of Naruto's life were filled with love, friendship, and a growing understanding of his own power. However, in the shadows of his dreams, a different journey awaited him, one that would shape him into the shinobi he was destined to become. In the Nara clan's garden, Naruto stood amidst the soft rustle of leaves, the moon casting a serene glow over the estate. His thoughts drifted to his past life and the bonds he had cherished. He wondered if those he missed had also been reincarnated into this strange world. He whispered a prayer to the night, hoping that Jushiro was living a long, healthy life, and the thought brought a faint smile to his lips. When he wasn't mastering the Nara clan's shadow techniques, Naruto devoted himself to swordsmanship. With a wooden practice sword, he swung with grace, each movement reflecting a quiet confidence as if his body remembered skills he had yet to learn. The younger Nara children often gathered to watch him practice, their eyes wide with awe. Shikamaru, leaning against a tree nearby, finally broke the silence, asking what kind of technique Naruto was using. Naruto grinned, claiming it was just a style he had come up with, though Shikamaru raised an eyebrow, recognizing when Naruto was dodging a question. One morning, Naruto decided to wear an eye patch over his right eye. As he came downstairs for breakfast, Yoshino gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What happened to your eye?" she asked, rushing to his side. Naruto chuckled nervously, holding up his hands. He reassured her that his eye was fine and lifted the eye patch to reveal it. She exhaled deeply, placing her hands on her hips, and expressed her relief, urging him not to scare her like that again. From a distance, Shikaku smirked, questioning the need for the eye patch. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck, explaining that he thought it looked cool. Shikaku, observing from the doorway, commented on Naruto's eccentricity, to which Naruto responded with a grin of appreciation. Yoshino sighed, shaking her head, but a small smile tugged at her lips. At the academy, Naruto often found himself observing the complicated dynamics of his classmates. Today, his attention was drawn to Ino and Sakura, who were once again arguing over Sasuke. He muttered under his breath about how ridiculous it was that they could both sit next to him. Ino snapped back, demanding to know what he said, but Naruto dismissed her with a lazy wave of his hand, rolling his eye. As the argument continued, Naruto noticed Shino standing off to the side, occasionally glancing at their group. He recognized the boy's curiosity but also his hesitation. He called out to Shino, waving him over. Shino stiffened, caught off guard, but Naruto encouraged him to join. He also invited Hinata, who stood nearby, assuring them that they didn't bite. Though Hinata's cheeks turned pink as she fidgeted, Shino gave her a reassuring nod, and they both approached. As they settled in, Naruto made a point of including them in the conversation, asking Shino if he had any cool bug stories to share. Shino blinked in surprise, even behind his glasses, and asked if Naruto really wanted to hear about his insects. Naruto expressed his genuine interest, leading Shino to relax slightly as he began explaining the abilities of his Kikeichu. Hinata, though quiet, smiled softly, her gaze occasionally flickering toward Naruto. Years passed, and the day of graduation arrived. Naruto stood with his friends, celebrating their success. He confidently proclaimed that he had told them they would pass. Shikamaru muttered that it was troublesome, though a faint hint of a smile played on his lips. As they left the academy, Mizuki approached Naruto, his tone friendly but overly so, asking if he could talk for a moment. Naruto glanced at his friends, telling them to go on without him and that he would catch up. Mizuki's proposition came with a promise of promotion to Chunin if Naruto retrieved the scroll. Naruto saw through the man's deceit but played along, pretending to be eager. He informed Shikaku of the situation, and Shikaku insisted they should report it to the Hokage. Naruto expressed his desire to handle it himself, but Shikaku frowned, warning him of the danger. He reminded Naruto of his own words about fighting and how it was wrong regardless of the circumstances. Naruto nodded, serious as he explained that sometimes one must fight to protect what matters. Shikaku studied his son for a long moment before sighing and agreeing to accompany him. Naruto smiled gratefully, unaware that Shikamaru had overheard their conversation. Leaning against the wall, he sighed to himself, recognizing Naruto's contradictions, lazy yet energetic at the same time. Night enveloped the rendezvous point as Naruto stood in the clearing, his twin wooden swords strapped to his back. Shikaku remained hidden in the shadows, his sharp eyes watching for any sign of danger. When Mizuki arrived, his sneer was evident as he demanded to know where the scroll was. Naruto did not answer, crossing his arms with a smirk. Mizuki repeated his question, annoyance dripping from his tone. Naruto chuckled, summoning two blades from thin air. His voice was calm but carried an undertone of challenge as he recited a poem. In an instant, a flash of light illuminated the clearing. When it faded, Naruto stood wielding two massive, curved black scimitars, their silver edges gleaming ominously under the moonlight. Both Mizuki and Shikaku stared, stunned, though Mizuki's sneer faltered slightly. Naruto tilted his head, his smirk widening as he proposed a game instead of discussing the scroll. Mizuki snapped that he didn't have time for games, but Naruto insisted he had no choice. Mizuki's confidence swelled despite the presence of Naruto's ominous scimitars. Naruto tilted his head, giving Mizuki a lazy smile and expressing that he was hoping for this reaction to make the game more fun. When Mizuki questioned the nature of the game, Naruto pointed one of his scimitars at him, explaining that it would be a game of spinning tops. Mizuki's confusion was evident as he asked what Naruto was talking about. Naruto raised one of his blades and gave it a lazy twirl, creating a gust of wind. He explained that the game was called Bushigoma, where he would spin and the wind would do the rest. Before Mizuki could respond, Naruto began to spin in place, his blades held at opposite angles. The motion created two arcs of wind that merged into a vortex, forming a massive spinning circle of air. The wind howled as it charged toward Mizuki, who barely leapt out of the way in time. The vortex changed direction midair, homing in on Mizuki like a living entity. It struck the ground near him, erupting into a storm that pulled him into its grasp. Mizuki shouted as he fought to keep his footing, his weapons useless against the powerful winds. Hidden in the shadows, Shikaku narrowed his eyes, realizing this was no ordinary technique. Naruto stopped spinning, resting his swords on his shoulders as the winds began to die down, leaving Mizuki disoriented. Naruto casually remarked that Mizuki was not bad but suggested he would like the next game better. Mizuki stumbled to his feet, glaring at Naruto and threatening him. Naruto ignored the threat, lowering his swords and introducing the next game called Kajioni, a shadow game where the rule was simple: whoever got their shadow stepped on lost. Mizuki's eyes darted to the ground, where the moonlight cast their long shadows across the clearing. His lip curled into a sneer as he dismissed the challenge, but Naruto's grin widened as he melted into the shadows at his feet, disappearing from sight. And control them. Suddenly, multiple shadow clones of Naruto emerged from the surrounding darkness, their blades drawn. Mizuki spun around, his eyes wide as he tried to track them all. He snarled in frustration, swinging wildly at the nearest clone, which dissipated into darkness, only for another to appear behind him. Naruto's voice echoed from all directions, warning Mizuki to be careful, as stepping on his shadow would mean defeat. Mizuki growled, slashing at another clone, but he soon realized that his own shadow had begun to stretch unnaturally. The real Naruto emerged from the darkness, stepping squarely onto Mizuki's shadow. Mizuki froze, a chill running up his spine. He tried to move, but his body refused to obey. Confusion filled his mind as he questioned what was happening. Naruto calmly declared Mizuki's defeat, and the shadow beneath him twisted unnaturally, rising like tendrils to bind his arms and legs. One tendril lashed out, striking Mizuki's side with enough force to send him stumbling backward. Naruto remarked that shadows could be dangerous and advised Mizuki to be careful where he stood. Shikaku observed the scene with keen eyes, his initial worry replaced by curiosity and pride, realizing Naruto was more skilled than he had anticipated. Naruto stepped closer, dismissing the shadows and teasing Mizuki about wanting to continue their game. Mizuki glared, sweat dripping down his face, calling Naruto a freak. Naruto chuckled, playfully reminding Mizuki that teachers were supposed to set an example. Mizuki regained his footing, clutching his side and demanding a real fight. Naruto shrugged, a grin spreading across his face, and suggested they play Kajiokuri. Mizuki frowned, confused about what that meant. Naruto explained that Mizuki needed to figure out which one of him was real. Before Mizuki could respond, Naruto blurred out of sight, and the clearing filled with flickering afterimages of him. Each afterimage darted toward Mizuki before vanishing, leaving him spinning in circles, unsure of where the real Naruto was. Mizuki slashed at one image, but his kunai passed harmlessly through it. Another afterimage leapt at him, causing Mizuki to panic and swing wildly. Naruto's voice taunted Mizuki, reminding him that he was wasting energy. The afterimages flickered like distorted shadows, making it easier for Mizuki, whose weak Raikage made the game simpler. Finally, Mizuki lunged at an afterimage, only to feel cold steel press against his back. Naruto whispered in his ear, revealing he had been wrong once again. Stepping back, Naruto spun his scimitars in his hands and introduced a new game called Iruni, explaining that he would choose a color and his attacks would only count if they matched that color. He decided on green. Mizuki stiffened, glancing at his own green flak jacket, questioning the absurdity of it all. Before he could finish, Naruto dashed forward, his blades slicing through the air. Mizuki raised his kunai to block, but Naruto's first strike was a feint, drawing Mizuki's defense away from his torso. Naruto followed up with a clean slash across Mizuki's jacket, cutting through the fabric and grazing his skin. He calmly stated the color, stepping back as Mizuki staggered, blood seeping through the torn jacket. Naruto explained that if he hadn't called the right color, it wouldn't have worked. But since Mizuki was wearing so much green, his strikes hurt more. Mizuki gritted his teeth and charged at Naruto with a roar. This time, Naruto stood still, sidestepping gracefully as Mizuki closed the distance. Naruto spun, his blade carving through Mizuki's jacket again, creating another deep gash. He repeated the color, his voice almost mocking. Mizuki dropped to his knees, gasping for breath as his strength began to fade. Naruto's playful demeanor shifted to cold seriousness as he addressed Mizuki, stating he had made the wrong choice. He could have been a teacher who helped others, but instead he had tried to manipulate Naruto. Shikaku stepped out from the shadows, his expression unreadable, and declared that it was enough. Naruto sighed, lowering his blades, which dissolved into black mist. He turned back toward Mizuki, expressing disappointment that their game had to end. Mizuki collapsed, trembling with fear and pain, claiming Naruto was not human. Naruto glanced over his shoulder, his smile returning, and remarked that Mizuki should have thought twice before trying to mess with him. Shikaku placed a firm hand on Naruto's shoulder, guiding him away from the defeated man and suggesting they report to the Hokage. Naruto nodded, his carefree demeanor returning as he mentioned a game of shogi when they got back. Shikaku sighed, a faint smirk appearing on his lips, acknowledging Naruto's relentless spirit. Later, Shikaku flickered into the Hokage's office with Naruto and the restrained Mizuki in tow. The late hour cast shadows across the room, and the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, looked up from a stack of reports with curiosity and concern. He inquired about their late visit, his gaze lingering on the subdued Mizuki, his expression hardening. Shikaku relayed the events of the night, explaining how Mizuki attempted to manipulate Naruto into stealing the Forbidden Scroll, but Naruto had seen through the deception and dealt with him. Hiruzen's gaze shifted to Naruto, who stood lazily with his arms crossed, clearly unbothered by the situation. The Hokage gestured for the Anbu stationed in the room, instructing them to take Mizuki to Tandai to uncover more about his activities. With Mizuki gone, Hiruzen turned back to Naruto, curiosity sparking in his eyes as he asked how Naruto had defeated Mizuki. Naruto shrugged nonchalantly, claiming he had beaten him at children's games. The Hokage raised an eyebrow and glanced at Shikaku, silently seeking confirmation. Shikaku, hands in his pockets, simply nodded. Hiruzen chuckled, his laughter filling the room, remarking on how fitting it was for someone like Naruto to win through children's games. As Shikaku and Naruto walked through the quiet streets of Konoha, Shikaku glanced sideways at his son, asking about the swords and the games he had mentioned. Naruto adjusted the eye patch on his face and let out a small yawn, explaining that the blades were a manifestation of his soul, reflecting who he was and his love for games, strategy, and fun. Shikaku raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the concept of manifesting one's soul into weapons and gaining abilities based on personality. Now that's something. Naruto smirked, knowing this ability was unique to Shinigami. Morning of team placements. The Nara family sat at the breakfast table, a familiar atmosphere of laziness and calm filling the room. Shikaku leaned back in his chair, observing his two sons. He asked who they would like to be paired with. Shikamaru shrugged, expressing that he would accept anyone strong. Naruto shared a similar sentiment, stating that as long as his teammates were competent, he wouldn't have to exert himself too much. Yoshino frowned, setting down her tea with a sharp clink, lamenting their lazy attitudes and wishing for some ambition. Shikaku chuckled, reminding her that she married into this. Yoshino sighed, shaking her head. Naruto and Shikamaru met up with Choji and Ino on their way to the academy, and the topic of team placements naturally arose. Ino asked who they hoped to team up with. Naruto replied that it didn't matter, just as long as he had competent teammates to allow him to relax. Shikamaru agreed, yawning. Ino scolded them for their laziness, hands on her hips, while Choji smiled, munching on a bag of chips, expressing his hope to be with them. At the academy, the classroom buzzed with excitement as Irika stepped forward, congratulating the students on becoming genin. He announced the team placements, silencing the chatter. Team 7 consisted of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Nara, with Kakashi Hatake as their sensei. Naruto leaned back in his seat, muttering about babysitting duty. Team 8 included Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga, with Kurenai Yuhi as their sensei. Team 10 was made up of Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akimichi, and Shikamaru Nara, with Asuma Sarutobi as their sensei. 3 hours later, Kakashi finally appeared, sauntering into the classroom. Before he could speak, Sakura immediately began scolding him for being 3 hours late. The noise roused Naruto from his nap, and he groggily opened his eye, wondering about all the yelling. On the academy rooftop, when it was Naruto's turn to introduce himself, he lazily stated his name and shared his likes and dislikes, including his dream for the world to achieve peace someday. Kakashi raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Returning home. When Naruto returned home, Yoshino was waiting for him. She asked how it went, and he sighed, leaning against the doorway, expressing that he would have to carry his team. Yoshino frowned, sensing it was bad news. The next day. Training Ground 7. Naruto arrived first and took the opportunity to lay on the grass, drifting off to sleep. When Sasuke and Sakura arrived, Sasuke's eyes were drawn to the two swords tied to Naruto's waist. He muttered to himself, questioning why this lazy individual even had swords. Hours passed before Kakashi finally arrived, prompting another scolding from Sakura, which once again woke Naruto. Kakashi explained the test and the rules, earning glares from Sakura and Sasuke for tricking them into skipping breakfast. When Kakashi asked Naruto why he had eaten, Naruto simply smirked, relaying a message from his mother that if Kakashi tried to pull something like that again, he would have a problem. Kakashi paled and nodded quickly. After Sakura and Sasuke were taken out of the fight, Sakura by Genjutsu and Sasuke by Kakashi's technique, Kakashi waited for Naruto's move. Suddenly, his book was ripped from his hands, and he turned to see Naruto standing behind him, flipping through the pages. Kakashi quickly distanced himself. Naruto giggled, complimenting Kakashi's taste in literature. Kakashi gave him a thumbs up, acknowledging that even a ninja needed a good hobby. Naruto tossed the book back and, as he unstrapped his blades, recited the release command. A bright flash of light erupted, and when it faded, Naruto stood holding two black curved scimitars. Kakashi's expression grew serious, wondering what those weapons were. Naruto smirked and asked Kakashi what he thought about games. Kakashi tilted his head, amused, and replied that games were fun until one realized their opponent was playing on a whole different level. Naruto's grin widened, challenging Kakashi to see how well he could keep up. Kakashi leaned back slightly, narrowing his eye in amusement as he answered Naruto's earlier question. He mentioned that he liked games when they didn't put his life on the line, but acknowledged he didn't have much choice in this situation. Naruto grinned, holding his twin scimitars loosely, and assured Kakashi that he would keep it fun. He explained that they would play a few rounds of his favorite games, each with its own twist. Kakashi exhaled deeply, adopting a ready stance and asking what the first game was. Naruto crossed his blades in front of him and twisted his wrists, causing the scimitars to spin at high speed. He declared that the first game was simple. He would spin, and Kakashi should try not to get caught in the wind. With a flourish, Naruto leapt into the air, rotating and creating sharp, cutting winds. The grass beneath them was torn apart, and small debris flew everywhere. Kakashi's eye widened as he realized Naruto was manipulating the wind. He leapt away, narrowly avoiding the vortex that formed and chased after him with devastating force. Reaching into his pouch, Kakashi hurled a series of explosive kunai into the oncoming vortex. The explosions disrupted the outer layer of the winds, but the core continued to push forward. Naruto's voice echoed through the chaos, taunting Kakashi about having trouble keeping up with the spinning top. Kakashi clicked his tongue and flipped backward, narrowly avoiding the vortex's pull. In a flash of insight, he imbued his tanto with lightning chakra and slashed at the spinning wind as it closed in. The electric surge disrupted the technique, dispersing the vortex into harmless gusts. Landing lightly, Kakashi adjusted his headband and remarked that it was close, questioning if this was how Naruto fought, turning children's games into deadly techniques. Naruto smirked, insisting that games were simply more fun, and challenged Kakashi to handle the next one. Naruto stepped back, spinning one of his scimitars in his hand. Glowing, translucent lily pads began to appear, floating midair between them. He explained that this game was called Kiru Jump, where they would leap from pad to pad, dodging each other's attacks. If one missed or fell, they would be wide open for a counter. Kakashi scanned the battlefield, noting that the lily pads flickered faintly, like projections. Testing one, he leapt onto it and felt a faint resistance underfoot, intrigued by the challenge. Naruto moved first, springing from one pad to another with effortless grace, firing bursts of wind from his blades to disrupt Kakashi's footing. Kakashi countered by leaping higher, using kunai to anchor himself as the lily pads threatened to fade beneath him. As their movements grew faster, Naruto's strikes became more precise, his scimitars slicing through the air to create waves of cutting pressure. Kakashi narrowly evaded the attacks. Naruto grinned, acknowledging Kakashi's agility. Kakashi responded with a playful jab about Naruto's laziness, using the distraction to feint a retreat before throwing a kunai laced with an explosive tag. The resulting explosion knocked Naruto off balance, but he recovered midair, flipping onto another pad. Naruto laughed, ready for more. As the lily pads vanished, he raised his blades, spiritual threads extending from their tips. With deft movements, he wove them into intricate patterns, declaring the challenge of Ayatori. Kakashi watched cautiously as the threads shot toward him, forming a web-like snare. He dodged the first wave, but the threads followed, twisting unnaturally to trap him. Activating his Raikiri, Kakashi slashed through part of the web only for more threads to replace it. He muttered about the persistence of the game, using his Sharingan to predict the threads' movements. Noticing Kakashi's sharpened focus, Naruto teased him about finally using the Sharingan. Kakashi remained silent, concentrating on the threads. With a burst of chakra, he leapt high into the air, flipping over the web entirely and hurling a cluster of lightning-charged kunai at Naruto. Naruto deflected them with one scimitar, acknowledging Kakashi's skill while retracting the threads. Naruto then raised a hand, spinning one of his scimitars lazily and introducing the classic game of Iruni. He declared his color as green, prompting Kakashi to respond with black. They understood the stakes. The damage depended on how much of the declared color they hit. Kakashi nodded, shifting into a low stance with his tanto gleaming faintly. Naruto dashed forward, targeting Kakashi's green flak jacket. Kakashi twisted to evade, retaliating with a sharp upward slash of his tanto, narrowly missing Naruto's black trim. Kakashi acknowledged Naruto's speed as he stepped back to create distance. Naruto smirked, challenging Kakashi to be faster. Closing the gap again, he launched a flurry of attacks, his blades aiming for Kakashi's jacket with pinpoint accuracy. Kakashi parried with his tanto, expertly redirecting the strikes. Using his Sharingan subtly, Kakashi predicted Naruto's next move. When Naruto lunged low, aiming for his stomach, Kakashi leapt aside and slashed downward, targeting the black accents on Naruto's back. Naruto barely managed to block, using one scimitar to intercept the tanto while the other grazed Kakashi's shoulder, slicing the faint green edge of the fabric. Naruto teased Kakashi about getting closer but not close enough. Adjusting his stance, Kakashi pressed the offensive, feinting toward Naruto's scabbards before pivoting to target the black trim on his sash. Naruto's eyes widened as he twisted to avoid the strike, the blade grazing the edge of the sash but failing to cut it cleanly. Naruto admitted it was close but challenged Kakashi to handle his next move. His movements became erratic and unpredictable, his scimitars spinning like whirlwinds as he relentlessly targeted Kakashi's flak jacket. Despite Kakashi's Sharingan, Naruto's feints made it difficult to avoid every strike. With a sudden burst of speed, Naruto spun low, his blade carving a clean cut through the green on Kakashi's stomach. Kakashi stepped back, acknowledging Naruto's skill with a dry tone. Naruto, standing tall and catching his breath, declared it was enough for this round. With a grin, Naruto sheathed his blades and introduced the last game, Onigako. He explained the rules. The Oni could attack freely while the other must avoid being caught to retain their ability to counterattack. The twin spirits' laughter echoed faintly as a black mark appeared on Kakashi's chest. Naruto darted away with surprising speed, declaring himself the one to catch Kakashi. Kakashi's eye narrowed as he accepted the challenge. The game began with him pursuing Naruto across the training field, using his Sharingan to predict the boy's movements. However, Naruto was slippery, using bursts of wind and agile leaps to evade capture. As the mark on Kakashi's chest began to fade, he realized the switch was imminent. When the mark transferred to Naruto, the boy turned on him with a mischievous grin, declaring it was his turn. Naruto's speed and unpredictability forced Kakashi on the defensive, leading to a rapid exchange of strikes and counters. The game concluded with Naruto managing to tap Kakashi on the shoulder, his grin triumphant. Kakashi exhaled heavily, lowering his tanto and acknowledging the fun in Naruto's games, though he noted they were more dangerous than they appeared. Naruto laughed, sheathing his blades and emphasizing that games were meant to keep things interesting. Kakashi adjusted his headband, promising to keep that in mind as the clock rang, signaling the end of the test. As the clock rang, the sharp sound pierced through Sakura's daze, pulling her out of the genjutsu. Blinking groggily, she stumbled to her feet, her vision swimming as she surveyed the training ground. Her head throbbed, but determination pushed her forward. Not far ahead, she spotted a figure stuck awkwardly in the dirt. Her eyes widened as realization struck. Sasuke's voice broke through her panic, demanding to be dug out. Relief flooded her as she scrambled to her feet and began clawing at the dirt with trembling hands. After several minutes of effort, she finally freed Sasuke, who glared at her, urging her to be quicker next time. He staggered slightly, brushing the dirt off his clothes with as much dignity as he could muster. He muttered to himself that next time, he would not let anyone assume he was defeated, feeling a faint embarrassment on his cheeks. As the two regrouped, they found Naruto and Kakashi already waiting. Naruto leaned casually against a stump, while Kakashi stood with his hands in his pockets, his signature lazy demeanor masking his sharp gaze. Kakashi broke the tense silence with a matter-of-fact tone, stating that they had all failed. Sakura's face paled, and Sasuke scowled, clenching his fists. Kakashi pointed out that Sakura's performance had been the worst, and as a result, she would be tied to the stump. Just as Sakura was about to be tied up, Naruto stepped forward with a cheeky grin, suggesting that there was no need for that. Kakashi narrowed his visible eye, questioning what Naruto meant. Naruto held up his hand, revealing two small objects dangling from his fingers, the bells. Kakashi blinked, his hand reflexively going to his waist, realizing the bells were indeed gone. Naruto chuckled, his grin widening, explaining that Kakashi had been too focused on the games to notice him snatching them. Kakashi's mind raced, replaying the events of the last few minutes, trying to figure out when Naruto had stolen them. A part of him felt frustrated for being outmaneuvered by a newly promoted genin, but another part was deeply impressed by Naruto's cunning. Kakashi let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head and asking what Naruto planned to do with the bells. Naruto turned serious, asking his teammates what they thought the real purpose of the test was. Kakashi's interest was piqued, realizing that Naruto had figured it out. Sakura hesitated, uncertain, suggesting that the purpose was to take the bells from Kakashi. Naruto made a loud buzzing noise, mimicking a game show wrong answer sound, leaving Sakura frowning and embarrassed. He then turned to Sasuke, who calmly suggested the same answer. Naruto shook his head, encouraging them to think harder about why Kakashi would give them such an unreasonable test. Sakura clenched her fists, realizing that there was no way they could have beaten Kakashi. She speculated that the test had to be about how they work together, but acknowledged that they hadn't even tried that. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, agreeing that they had been told to focus on getting the bells, but it was clear that Kakashi wanted them to fail because they hadn't worked as a team. This realization made sense to him, as he had been too focused on proving himself. Finally, Sakura glanced at Sasuke, who gave a slight nod, and together they turned to Kakashi, stating softly that it was about teamwork. Kakashi smiled, confirming their conclusion. Kakashi crossed his arms, his tone turning serious as he explained that the test was not about individual skills or strength, but about teamwork. He emphasized that on missions, failing to work together could lead to dire consequences, including losing a teammate. He paused to let his words sink in, continuing that those who break the rules are considered scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. Sakura looked down, feeling shame, while Sasuke's jaw tightened. However, Naruto stood tall, his expression unreadable. Breaking the silence, Naruto stepped forward, suggesting they do the test over. Kakashi blinked in surprise, asking if he was serious. Naruto affirmed that they would work as a team this time, with no solo acts or selfish moves. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged surprised glances but slowly nodded in agreement. Kakashi chuckled softly, finding Naruto interesting, and agreed to do the test over. With that, the team prepared themselves for a fresh start. At home, Yoshino asked how the test went, and Naruto recounted the entire story. At the Hokage Tower, as the final Jonin finished delivering their reports to the Hokage, all eyes turned to Kakashi. His reputation for failing every team made his results the most anticipated. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, gestured for Kakashi to speak. With his signature eye smile firmly in place, Kakashi announced that Team 7 had passed. Before the tension could break, Naruto tilted his head slightly, a lazy grin spreading across his face, and asked the Nine Tails for its name. The Nine Tails blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected question, and snarled, though its voice carried a hint of curiosity. Naruto shrugged, stating that if they were going to fight, he would at least like to know what to call it, as Nine Tails sounded impersonal. The massive fox growled low, its claws digging into the ground, but then unexpectedly chuckled, a dark sound that reverberated like thunder. It introduced itself as Kurama, warning Naruto to remember the name of the one who would crush him. Naruto's grin widened, appreciating the name and expressing eagerness for the challenge. Kurama's lips curled into a fanged grin, ready to see if Naruto's games could match its might. In an instant, Naruto vanished, reappearing midair with his swords coated in a swirling black aura. Kurama's sharp gaze caught the dark energy forming around the blades, and it growled, intrigued. As Kurama swung a massive paw upward, Naruto evaded with a quick movement, retaliating by swinging one of his blades downward, unleashing a crescent-shaped slash of pure darkness. Kurama roared as the attack cut through the air, but with a swipe of its tail, it deflected the dark slash into the ground, carving a deep trench. Naruto landed a few meters away, remarking that he didn't fight fair. With a spin, he used a technique that generated a spiraling tornado of wind, sending it directly toward Kurama. The Nine Tails leaped high into the air, its colossal frame casting a shadow over the battlefield, and countered by inhaling deeply before unleashing a stream of searing flames that collided with the tornado. The two forces clashed, creating a fiery storm that scorched the earth below. Naruto was already moving, appearing behind Kurama with a burst of speed. His swords gleamed as he swung them horizontally, aiming for the beast's back. But Kurama, sensing his presence, spun midair, swiping a tail toward him. Naruto barely managed to block, but the sheer force sent him hurtling backward. He skidded across the ruined field before coming to a stop. Naruto acknowledged Kurama's strength, brushing dust from his sleeve and deciding it was time to make things a bit more playful. Kurama inhaled deeply, its chest expanding as chakra gathered in its maw. The air grew heavy as a massive-tailed beast ball began to form. Naruto's eyes widened at the sight. Kurama fired the sphere, the blast screaming toward him with devastating speed. Naruto raised both blades, their edges glowing with shadowy energy, and summoned a swirling black vortex that swallowed the tailed beast ball whole. The explosion that followed was contained within the void, the destructive power vanishing into nothingness. Kurama's eyes narrowed, intrigued by Naruto's ability to absorb its attacks. Naruto smirked, inviting Kurama to try again. Naruto crouched low, forming a seal with one hand. His shadow shot forward, stretching unnaturally fast across the battlefield. The shadow connected with Kurama's, freezing the beast in place. Seizing the opportunity, Naruto closed the distance, his sword glowing with dark energy. However, Kurama's chakra flared violently, shattering the shadow's hold in an instant. Naruto was thrown backward, skidding to a stop as Kurama loomed over him, its crimson eyes blazing. Kurama acknowledged Naruto's cleverness but warned him that cleverness alone wouldn't save him. Naruto stood, wiping blood from his lip, confident that he had more than just cleverness. The field began to change as glowing cards materialized in the air, each inscribed with poetic lines. Kurama, intrigued by the sudden shift in atmosphere, demanded to know what was happening. Naruto explained that it was a game of Kiruda, where matching phrases could lead to unexpected outcomes. Kurama growled but played along, swiping at one of the hovering cards. The chosen card disintegrated in a flash of light, revealing a poetic verse. Kurama's eyes gleamed with curiosity as it realized the game involved wits and speed. It scanned the remaining cards and lunged for another, revealing the second half of a matched phrase. A sphere of dark energy erupted from the cards and launched toward Naruto. He dodged with agility, smirking as he twirled one of his swords lazily. Spotting another card mid-step, he snatched it deftly and read its line aloud. He quickly matched it with another, reciting the second phrase. A flurry of sakura petals burst forth, swirling around Naruto like a protective barrier. Kurama, growing impatient, lunged forward, its enormous claws crashing down and sending tremors across the battlefield. Naruto darted away, spotting another card. He snatched it and read its line aloud, but Kurama's voice thundered behind him, claiming a match of its own. The resulting explosion of fire forced both combatants to leap back to avoid the inferno, leaving the battlefield scorched and smoldering. Naruto landed gracefully, acknowledging Kurama's impressive timing. Kurama, with narrowed eyes, admitted that Naruto's games were more entertaining than expected and suggested raising the stakes. The remaining cards shimmered, their movements becoming erratic as they zipped through the air. Naruto laughed softly, teasing Kurama about its struggle to keep up. As Naruto stood in front of the fallen Kurama, his breathing steady but heavy, a strange warmth filled the air. Suddenly, two glowing figures emerged from the shadows of his inner world, Minato and Kushina. Their presence radiated a soft light, tinged with bittersweet sadness. Kushina rushed forward, enveloping Naruto in a tight embrace, her concern evident as she noticed his condition. Minato, observing the scene, chuckled lightly, reassuring Kushina that Naruto was merely unconscious. Their attention turned to Kurama, who lay weakly nearby, chuckling despite its condition. Kurama promised not to cause trouble again, preferring the safety of being sealed inside Naruto. Minato considered Kurama's words, understanding that this arrangement would keep the beast safe from threats. For what felt like hours, Naruto and his parents talked, sharing stories and offering advice for the future. As the light surrounding them began to dim, Minato placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, reminding him that their time was running out. Kushina cupped Naruto's cheek, urging him to take care of himself and not let anyone push him around. Naruto grinned, promising to heed her words. Minato expressed pride in Naruto's growth, affirming that he was stronger than he realized. As their forms began to fade, Kushina leaned in and kissed Naruto's forehead, leaving him with a final message of love. With his parents gone, Naruto turned to Kurama, who still lay on the ground, breathing shallowly. Taking a deep breath, Naruto closed his eyes, envisioning the barren ground transforming into lush greenery filled with vibrant energy. In an instant, Kurama's wounds healed. Kurama blinked in surprise, looking around before settling its gaze on Naruto. With determination in his eyes, Naruto approached Kurama and extended a hand, ready to forge a new bond. The Nine-Tails observed Naruto in silence, the sage's words resonating in his mind. The one to bridge the gap will be someone like no other. Could this boy truly be the one? Setting the thought aside, Kurama let out a low chuckle and raised a massive paw, offering Naruto a fist bump. They exchanged a playful gesture, and Naruto's grin widened. Suddenly, Kayakatsu appeared atop Kurama's head, her expression mischievous. She suggested a game of hide-and-seek, leaving Kurama momentarily dumbfounded. Naruto, ever the optimist, imagined Kurama shrinking down to a more manageable size, resembling a fluffy, fox-sized version of himself. Kurama growled in disbelief, clearly not amused by the idea. When Naruto awoke, his body felt heavy, but he pushed himself out of bed. Stumbling into the living room, he found Asuma, Choji, and Ino sitting with Shikamaru. Asuma greeted him casually, and Naruto returned the gesture with a yawn. Ino teased him about sleeping in, calling him lazy, to which Naruto replied that it was his day off and he deserved to enjoy it. Choji chimed in, mentioning their recent D-rank mission, which involved helping an elderly lady move furniture. Shikamaru expressed his preference for such easy tasks over anything more serious. Naruto slumped onto the couch, agreeing with him. Asuma chuckled, lighting a cigarette, while Ino feigned annoyance, suggesting they could all be a bit more enthusiastic. Meanwhile, Team 7 was caught up in their endless cycle of chores, with Kakashi focusing on refining their teamwork. Sakura, who was lagging behind, was encouraged to improve her stamina and taijutsu. Kakashi introduced the tree climbing exercise to enhance their chakra control, but Naruto chose to recline against a tree instead. Sakura questioned his lack of training, while Kakashi explained that the Nara clan learned chakra control early on, which was essential for their unique jutsu. Naruto smirked, acknowledging the perks of being a Nara. During their downtime, Kakashi and Naruto bonded over Ikaika, much to the annoyance of Sakura and Sasuke, who found their camaraderie puzzling. Kakashi, Guy, and Kurenai were assigned an escort mission for Lord Kamen, a wealthy merchant who had narrowly escaped an ambush that claimed his men, thanks to Konoha's umbu. At Kakashi's request, Naruto joined the mission, which Hiruzen approved without hesitation. When Kakashi arrived at the Nara household, Naruto expressed his apprehension about the mission, sensing something was off. Kakashi, with a grin, praised his instincts. At the village gates, Naruto met Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, and Lord Kamen. The merchant appeared shaken, haunted by his recent experiences. Naruto attempted to lighten the mood with jokes, but Kamen remained distant. As they traveled, Guy's exuberance contrasted with Naruto's laid-back demeanor. Guy encouraged Naruto to embrace youthful energy, while Naruto insisted he was conserving his strength. Their banter elicited laughter from Kakashi and exasperated sighs from Kurenai, who remained focused on scouting ahead. That night, the team rested cautiously, with Guy's vigilance countering the oppressive atmosphere surrounding them. However, unease buzzed in Naruto's gut as they crossed a narrow bridge. The following day, signs of battle were evident, with shattered weapons and remnants of a previous ambush scattered about. 3 figures emerged on the other side, and Naruto stepped forward, maintaining a calm expression as he suggested they settle things peacefully. Kazuo, one of the figures, chuckled and raised his firearm, indicating that negotiations were off the table. He fired without hesitation, but Naruto skillfully intercepted the bullets with his blades, muttering under his breath. Kurama's voice rumbled in Naruto's mind, questioning his laziness. Naruto smirked, declaring that the gunman was his target and lunging at Kazuo without waiting for permission. Ryuji, another figure, cracked his knuckles and grinned, eager to take on Guy. The battle erupted, with Kakashi facing Haruka, leaving Kurenai to guard Kamen. Kakashi demanded to know why they were targeting the merchant, but Haruka remained silent, a cryptic smile on her lips. Back with Naruto, he sprinted ahead, leading Kazuo away from the group. He proposed a game, spinning his blades as he spoke. Kazuo smirked, dismissing Naruto's playful attitude. Naruto's grin widened as he philosophized that life was a game, and one just needed to know how to play. Kazuo narrowed his eyes, raising his weapon and challenging Naruto to prove himself. As the confrontation escalated, Naruto stood with his blades crossed before him, their dark sheen reflecting Kazuo's confident smirk. Kazuo taunted him about his weapons, charging his firearm with crackling energy. Naruto remained calm, shadows rippling around him as he aimed to entertain both of them. Without warning, Kazuo fired a glowing bullet, but Naruto vanished just in time. Kazuo's smirk faltered as Naruto reappeared behind him, executing a technique that sent Kazuo hurtling forward, landing with a cloud of dust. Kazuo quickly recovered, acknowledging Naruto's speed. He fired 3 shots in rapid succession, but Naruto twisted his blades, creating a swirling wind that intercepted the bullets. Kazuo leaped back, firing a charged shot that split the tornado but failed to dissipate its force. Caught off guard, Kazuo staggered as Naruto pressed the advantage, vanishing into the shadows. Kazuo scanned the battlefield, challenging Naruto to do better than hiding. A voice echoed from all directions, taunting him. Kazuo's shadow stretched unnaturally, and just as he noticed, a blade pierced up from beneath him. He narrowly avoided the strike, but Naruto's voice whispered again, and Kazuo found himself evading shadowy tendrils that lashed at him from all sides. Each step felt precarious as the shadows closed in around him. Frustrated, Kazuo threw a small device to the ground, which exploded in a burst of light, dispelling the shadows momentarily. Naruto reappeared on a nearby ledge, resting one of his scimitars on his shoulder, unimpressed by Kazuo's tactics. Kazuo smirked, pulling out another weapon, a sleek rifle-like gun, ready for the next round of their confrontation. Naruto was quick, but Kazuo wanted to test his limits. The rifle emitted a low hum before firing a concentrated energy beam. Naruto leapt high, dodging the initial blast, but Kazuo anticipated the move and adjusted his aim mid-fire, sweeping the beam toward Naruto in midair. Naruto spun, his blades glowing faintly as he activated Zanrin. A massive wave of energy erupted from his swords, colliding with the beam and splitting it in two. The resulting explosion sent both combatants flying in opposite directions. As the dust settled, Naruto pushed himself to his feet, breathing steadily despite the strain. He brushed off debris from his coat and acknowledged Kazuo's skills. Kazuo raised his gun, eyes narrowing, feeling a thrill of excitement. Naruto stood still, his blades crossed in front of him. Shadows danced around him as he took a deep breath, the battlefield quieting. He declared softly, his voice carrying an ominous weight, a phrase that hinted at the gravity of the moment. Kazuo frowned, gripping his broken rifle tighter, feeling the world shift unnaturally. Trails of Ryatsu snaked through the air, their glow eerily illuminating the battlefield. Naruto began to move, his steps deliberate as he followed the path of energy left behind by Zenrin. Each step brought him closer to Kazuo, yet his form flickered, blending with the shadows around him. Kazuo's instincts screamed at him. He aimed his weapon wildly, scanning the shifting shadows for any sign of Naruto, demanding to see him. The Ryatsu trail glimmered brighter as Naruto approached, his movements precise and soundless. Kazuo finally caught a glimpse of him, his silhouette emerging briefly from the shadows as he closed the distance. The moment Kazuo's eyes locked onto Naruto's moving form, everything stopped. Kazuo froze mid-breath, his body stiffening as an invisible force gripped him. His gun clattered to the ground as realization dawned on him. Naruto's steps halted as he lowered his blades, standing just a few feet away from the paralyzed man. The air around them felt heavier, oppressive. Naruto spoke softly, his tone lacking malice but carrying an air of finality. Kazuo's body trembled, his knees buckling as he fell to the ground. His breathing grew shallow and then stopped altogether. The light in his eyes dimmed as his body slumped forward, lifeless. Naruto exhaled and sheathed his blades, expressing a hint of regret for the fallen opponent. The battlefield grew still once more, the remnants of the Ryatsu trail fading into the ether as Naruto turned and walked away. The game had ended, and the victor was clear. Ryuji cracked his knuckles, each pop echoing in the tense atmosphere. He stood tall, his towering frame exuding raw power as he grinned wickedly. His eyes locked onto Guy, who stretched in preparation, the light in his eyes burning with youthful determination. Ryuji felt a thrill of anticipation, eager for a challenge. Guy returned the grin, his teeth gleaming with confidence. He hoped Ryuji was ready, as they were about to test the limits of their strength. Without warning, Ryuji lunged forward, the ground beneath him exploding from the sheer force of his takeoff. His fist swung down like a hammer, aiming to crush Guy in one blow, but Guy sidestepped with ease. Ryuji noted Guy's speed, his grin widening. Guy countered with a high-speed kick aimed at Ryuji's ribs, but Ryuji raised his forearm just in time. Trees swayed and leaves scattered as the two combatants exchanged blows, each strike carrying immense power. Ryuji roared, burst of chakra erupting from his body, creating a shockwave that forced Guy to leap back. The ground where Guy had been standing cracked and splintered. Ryuji taunted him, challenging his ability to keep up. Guy landed gracefully, his expression calm but focused, declaring that youth burns brightest under pressure. Ryuji charged again, his skin shimmering as he activated his chakra-hardening technique. Each strike felt like a sledgehammer, forcing Guy to stay on the defensive. Guy blocked and dodged with extraordinary agility, but the sheer force of Ryuji's attacks began to leave cracks in the ground and fissures in nearby boulders. Guy acknowledged Ryuji's impressive taijutsu as he backflipped to create some distance. Ryuji responded, complimenting Guy's reputation as the Green Beast. Deciding it was time to turn the tide, Guy crossed his arms and focused his chakra. The air around him shifted as he activated the first gate, then the second, his body radiating an intense energy. He declared his intent to demonstrate the power of youth. Ryuji's eyes narrowed as Guy disappeared from his sight. Before Ryuji could react, a devastating kick slammed into his side, sending him hurtling through several trees. He recovered quickly, rolling to his feet and spitting out a mouthful of blood, feeling exhilarated by the challenge. Ryuji slammed his fists together, creating a burst of energy that leveled the surrounding trees. The two warriors collided once more, their speed and power creating shockwaves that shook the earth. Guy's movements became more erratic and unpredictable as he unleashed the morning peacock. Ryuji weathered the storm, his hardened skin absorbing most of the damage. He countered with a powerful uppercut, enhanced by chakra to create a localized explosion. Guy twisted midair, avoiding the full brunt of the attack, and retaliated with a spinning kick to Ryuji's head, staggering the larger man. Frustrated but exhilarated, Ryuji slammed his fists into the ground, channeling his chakra to create a massive shockwave that radiated outward. Guy leapt high into the air, avoiding the blast entirely. He called out from above, challenging Ryuji to do better. Ryuji smirked, eager for the challenge. He propelled himself upward with a burst of chakra, meeting Guy midair. Their fists clashed, creating a deafening boom that sent both men flying back. Guy landed in a crouch, skidding to a stop, while Ryuji crashed into a boulder, shattering it. Realizing that brute strength alone wouldn't be enough, Ryuji focused his chakra entirely into his fists, his arms glowing with an intense light. He charged at Guy one final time, each step shaking the ground. Guy, now glowing with the power of the fifth gate, planted his feet firmly. He waited until Ryuji was mere inches away before unleashing the morning peacock once again, his fiery strikes overwhelming Ryuji's chakra-fueled assault. As the barrage of punches landed, Ryuji's hardened skin began to crack, and his movements slowed. With one final shout, Guy delivered a spinning kick to Ryuji's chest, sending him flying backward. Ryuji crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater, and lay still. Guy stood over his defeated opponent, his breathing heavy but controlled. He gazed down at Ryuji, who coughed weakly, a grin still on his battered face. Ryuji acknowledged Guy's strength, admitting that it was the most fun he had experienced in years. With a smile, Guy gave him a thumbs up, reminding him that true strength lies not just in power, but in spirit. Ryuji chuckled weakly before slipping into unconsciousness. Guy turned, his usual exuberance dimmed slightly as he rejoined the others, ready to assist in the next phase of the battle. Despite his victory, he knew the fight was far from over. Chapter 13. Kakashi faced Haruka Ueno on the battlefield, where an eerie silence hung in the air. Her presence radiated an unsettling calm, illuminated by the shifting glow of elemental chakra and spiritual energy. Haruka moved with serene grace, as though the battle itself was beneath her. Kakashi, in contrast, was tense but focused, his Sharingan slowly tracking her every movement. Haruka broke the silence, noting the weight of many lives on Kakashi's shoulders. She questioned his motives for fighting, whether it was to atone, to protect, or simply to survive. Kakashi remained silent, his grip tightening around his lightning-charged tanto, ready for anything. Haruka observed his silence and decided to test his resolve. With fluid movements, Haruka formed intricate seals, unleashing a gust of razor-sharp wind. Kakashi leapt back, his Sharingan predicting the attack's trajectory, but the wind changed course mid-flight, slicing toward him like a living blade. In response, Kakashi activated his tanto, slashing through the wind and dispersing it with a burst of energy. He dashed forward, closing the gap between them instantly, and brought his blade down. Haruka raised her hand, summoning a wall of water that solidified into ice just as Kakashi's blade connected. Sparks flew as the lightning clashed against the ice, but before he could press the attack, Haruka melted into the water, flowing across the ground like a river. Kakashi spun, his Sharingan tracking her reformation behind him. He was already moving when she unleashed a volley of fireballs, dodging the first two and countering the third with a water jutsu of his own. Steam hissed around them as fire and water collided, creating a thick mist. Haruka remarked on Kakashi's quickness, suggesting that it alone wouldn't save him. Suddenly, chains erupted from the ground, glowing with spiritual energy. Kakashi flipped backward, avoiding the chains as they lashed at him, but one caught his arm, leaving a burning sensation. Gritting his teeth, he formed a one-handed seal, summoning a massive earthen wall that rose between him and Haruka, forcing the chains to retract. Haruka wasted no time. She clapped her hands together, and a glowing sigil appeared beneath her feet. The ground rumbled as jagged pillars of stone shot upward in a wide radius, forcing Kakashi to leap and weave through the treacherous terrain. He retaliated with a flurry of kunai, each wrapped with explosive tags. Haruka deflected them with a wave of water, but the explosions obscured her vision for a moment, allowing Kakashi to close the gap. He appeared behind her, his tanto glowing with Raikiri's power, but his blade passed through empty air as Haruka dissolved into fire, reappearing several meters away. She smiled faintly, acknowledging his effort but deeming it predictable. Kakashi did not falter. He reached into his pouch, pulling out ninja wire and infusing it with chakra. In a blur of motion, he flung the wire toward her, weaving it into a complex trap that encircled her. Kakashi smirked as he activated the chakra embedded within the wire, causing the trap to pulse with electricity. For the first time, Haruka's serene expression flickered with surprise. However, her eyes glowed with an unnatural light as she clapped her hands, and the sigils on her body flared brightly. The 5 elements swirled around her, converging into a massive spiritual construct, a towering figure composed of fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning. Its glowing eyes locked onto Kakashi, and with a deafening roar, it lunged forward. Kakashi dodged its first attack, which left a crater in the ground. His Sharingan analyzed the construct's movements, searching for a weakness. The entity was relentless, its elemental form constantly shifting to counter his attacks. Sweat dripped down Kakashi's face as he formed another set of seals, summoning a massive water dragon that surged toward the construct, colliding with it in a burst of elemental energy. The construct staggered but did not fall, retaliating with a blast of wind and fire that forced Kakashi to retreat. He landed on a nearby rock, breathing heavily, realizing he needed to find a way to disrupt Haruka's control over it. Haruka floated above the battlefield, her eyes glowing as she directed the elemental construct. She acknowledged Kakashi's endurance, stating that all things must end. Kakashi's gaze hardened as Guy landed beside him, bruised but grinning. Guy encouraged Kakashi, stating that he would handle the construct while Kakashi focused on Haruka. Chapter 14. Guy stood shoulder to shoulder with Kakashi, their gazes fixed on Haruka, who floated serenely above the ground, her form flickering with an ethereal glow. The markings of her ritualistic sigils shimmered beneath her feet, charged with the power of all 5 chakra natures, blending seamlessly with her spiritual energy. Naruto crouched in the shadows, ready to step in if needed, though he respected their strength enough to hold back for now. Guy wiped the blood from his lip, determination burning in his eyes. He acknowledged that Haruka was tougher than Ruji, noting that she was on a whole different level. Kakashi nodded, focused on Haruka's every movement, recognizing her intelligence and the need to avoid giving her any openings. Haruka smiled serenely, her voice calm and melodic, dismissing the concept of weakness as a mortal concern. Strength and weakness are but illusions in the grand weave of life. With her hands raised, chakra swirled as 5 elemental orbs, fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning manifested around her. If they wished to test their resolve, she would grant them the gift of enlightenment. With a wave of her hand, the elemental orbs shot toward them at blinding speed. Kakashi and Guy leaped apart as the orbs collided with the ground, erupting into bursts of raw elemental energy. Fire scorched the earth, water surged in crashing waves, and jagged rocks erupted like spikes from the ground. Kakashi countered with a swift earth wall, blocking the worst of the debris, while Guy used his incredible speed to weave through the chaos. Guy launched himself at Haruka, his kick blazing with chakra. She shifted into her wind element, her body dissolving into a gust of air. Guy's attack passed harmlessly through her, and she reappeared several meters away. Her voice carried a hint of challenge as she acknowledged Guy's strength, stating that brute force alone would not touch her. She extended her hand, summoning chains that shot toward him, glowing with spiritual energy. Kakashi intercepted, throwing a flurry of lightning-charged shuriken to sever the chains, his Sharingan spinning as he analyzed Haruka's movements. Guy landed beside Kakashi, his fists clenched, expressing frustration that their current strategy was ineffective. Determined to change the tide, he crossed his arms over his chest and activated the 5th gate, the Gate of Limit. With renewed speed, he charged at Haruka. Haruka fused with her earth element, her body becoming solid and unyielding as stone. Guy's punch connected, sending shockwaves through the battlefield, but she remained rooted, absorbing the force. Before she could retaliate, Kakashi appeared behind her, his tanto glowing with lightning chakra. He slashed at her back, but Haruka shifted into her fire form, reappearing behind them as she formed seals. Kakashi's mind raced as he dodged her relentless attacks, realizing her versatility was overwhelming. Every time they countered one element, she switched to another. If this kept up, they would run out of chakra before she did. Guy landed beside him, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead, asking if Kakashi had any ideas. As Guy charged the construct, opening the sixth gate for an edge, Kakashi rushed toward Haruka, his tanto ready. She greeted him with a serene smile, questioning his boldness in challenging her directly. Haruka unleashed a barrage of blasts, but Kakashi weaved through them with his Sharingan, closing the distance. Their blades clashed, her spiritual energy meeting his lightning chakra in a brilliant display. She whispered to Kakashi, questioning why he fought when his heart was heavy with pain, suggesting it would be easier to let go and accept the world's balance. Kakashi's resolve hardened as he declared he had already lost too much and would not lose anyone else. Despite his best efforts, Haruka's spiritual form proved almost untouchable. Kakashi dodged another elemental attack, panting heavily. His Sharingan glowed with intensity, and he hesitated, reaching for his left eye. The memory of Rin's death flashed through his mind, the moment he awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. The strain and trauma were powers he dreaded to use. But as Haruka prepared a final, devastating attack, Kakashi's resolve solidified. Before he could activate Kamui, a shadow flickered across the battlefield. Naruto stepped forward, his scimitars drawn, his expression calm yet commanding. He told Kakashi he had done enough and that it was time for him to handle the situation. Haruka's calm facade cracked as she sensed Naruto's overwhelming spiritual energy, acknowledging his presence. Naruto smirked, spinning his blades with casual grace, asserting that it was now his turn. Kakashi recognized the subtle shift in Naruto's expression and the tension in his shoulders. He ordered Guy to run as fast as he could, sensing the danger that was about to unfold. Guy, initially confused, quickly understood the urgency and followed Kakashi's lead as they disappeared into the distance. As Naruto faced Haruka, she commented on his expression, questioning his demeanor. Naruto acknowledged her knowledge of his true lineage, and she revealed that the organization she served dealt in intelligence. He pointed out that assassination was another of her services. Haruka confirmed this, explaining that their clients were persistent and would not stop until Lord Kamen's life ended. Naruto sighed, wishing they could resolve the situation peacefully. Haruka raised an eyebrow, humoring him, stating that his pacifism was admirable but naive. Naruto shifted his stance, declaring they would find out what would happen next. His voice dropped to a low chant, the air around him darkening as if the world itself held its breath. He called forth Karamatsu Shinju, weaving a tale of lovers bound by fate's cruel snare. With a powerful release, black tendrils erupted from him, extending outward in sharp, twisting patterns resembling ink-drawn pine branches. The tendrils coiled and writhed, swallowing the surrounding light and casting the battlefield into gloom. Behind him, two spirits manifested, their forms faint and imposing. A chilling aura swept through the area, making the sky itself appear fractured, the yellow square panels of a theater stage hovering in the void above. Haruka's calm demeanor faltered, her fingers twitching as if brushing against something unseen. She wondered what this could be. Naruto tilted his head downward, his voice a low murmur as he observed the scene. A tragic play was about to unfold. The battlefield was silent, save for the eerie hum of shadow and despair. Chapter 16. The Tragic Curtain Rises. The battlefield stood silent, engulfed by shadow and despair as Naruto's Bankai took form. Black tendrils writhed like ink-drawn pine branches, spreading outward to cover the land beneath his feet. Above them, the sky fractured, replaced by eerie yellow square panels, resembling a theater stage. Behind Naruto, his Zanpakuto spirits, Katen and Kyōkotsu, loomed ominously, their ethereal presence filling the air with weight and dread. Haruka's serene mask faltered as the gloom settled in. Her spiritual energy hummed dangerously, but even she could not deny the unnatural weight pressing down on her. She acknowledged the chilling power, recognizing it as a stage set for tragedy. Naruto stood still, Katen Kyōkotsu held loosely at his sides, the blade's edges glimmering faintly in the murk. The story was about to begin. Act 1. Hesitance and apportionment of wounds. Naruto took a deliberate step forward, and Haruka, sensing the shift, fused with her first element, fire. Flames erupted around her body, casting an infernal glow in stark contrast to the oppressive shadows. Her speed increased, her figure blurring as she launched herself at Naruto. Her fist swung forward, flames roaring, but Naruto sidestepped smoothly. The tip of his scimitar caught her arm, leaving a shallow mark. Yet Naruto grimaced as well, a matching mark appearing across his arm as if mirrored. Haruka's eyes narrowed, questioning the shared wounds. Naruto calmly recited a verse about their connection, emphasizing that any wounds inflicted upon one would also appear on the other, yet he could not perish from them. She halted for a moment, analyzing the strange phenomenon. With a flick of her hand, she hurled a torrent of flames at him. Naruto vanished with Shunpa, appearing behind her with a swift slash. Her flaming form twisted midair, and she retaliated with a fire-coated elbow strike to his ribs. Both staggered as matching wounds appeared, scorch marks searing into their flesh. Haruka frowned, recognizing the cleverness of his ability. She questioned how long he could maintain this balance. Naruto smirked faintly, even as blood trickled from his lips, affirming that he would endure long enough. Haruka shifted tactics, summoning a swirling vortex of water, dousing her flames and enveloping herself in liquid armor. The water coiled around her limbs, augmenting her movements. Her strikes became fluid and unpredictable as she launched rapid jets of water at Naruto while closing in for hand-to-hand combat. Naruto matched her rhythm, his scimitars dancing to intercept her strikes. Each time he cut through her water armor, droplets splashed across him, leaving sharp stinging marks on his skin. Haruka grinned, realizing that the shared wound effect extended to her elemental strikes as well. She flicked her hand, summoning a series of binding sigils that glowed with spiritual energy. Chains shot out of the sigils, wrapping around Naruto's legs and arms. Haruka summoned an orb of swirling water and hurled it directly at his chest. Unable to dodge, he took the attack full force. The water exploded into a crushing torrent, and she watched as he crumbled to his knees. Yet blood suddenly spurted from her own chest, a gash forming exactly where Naruto had been hit. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she staggered, questioning what was happening. Naruto rose slowly, breathing heavily, revealing the truth of their connection. No matter what damage she inflicted upon him, she would feel it too. Haruka scowled, wiping blood from her lips, lamenting the cruelty of their situation. Naruto's voice dropped, indicating that this was only the beginning. Act 2, The Pillow of Shame. Naruto raised his blade, reciting softly about the shame that had caused his partner such wounds. Black spots began to materialize across Haruka's skin, pulsing ominously. She stumbled, her spiritual energy faltering for the first time as blood began to leak from the spots. Confusion filled her as the black stains spread like an infection, and every movement seemed to pull her deeper into pain. Naruto explained that it was a manifestation of a man's shame. Determined, Haruka gritted her teeth and shifted into earth. Her skin hardened into stone, cracks forming where the black spots marred her surface. With a furious roar, she slammed her fists into the ground, causing the earth to erupt in jagged pillars that shot toward Naruto. Naruto dodged nimbly with Shunpa. Haruka surged forward, her stone fist crashing down toward him. He met her head-on, his scimitars striking her stone form in rapid succession. Every blow rebounded onto himself, blood splattering from his arms and legs. Yet Haruka's hardened form deteriorated just as quickly, fissures splitting her body as the black spots bled profusely. Frustration bubbled within her as she questioned why he would not fall. Naruto's gaze remained cold, asserting that she was already breaking. Act 3, The Severing Abyss. Naruto's voice carried softly across the broken field, describing their resignation to fate as they hurled themselves into the gushing waters. The ground beneath them gave way as a vast, dark body of water erupted into existence. Haruka and Naruto were pulled into its depths, submerged within the inescapable abyss. The water was oppressive, cold, and unending. Haruka thrashed, struggling to keep herself afloat as her chakra reserves were steadily drained. She refused to succumb to this fate. Naruto floated effortlessly, his gaze locked onto her, declaring that the play was nearly over. The final act, thread-cutting scissors upon a blood-streaked throat. Naruto sheathed his blades, the haunting stillness of his Bankai consuming the battlefield. The abyssal waters swirled ominously, resonating with Haruka's fading strength. She struggled to rise, but her body refused, cracks spreading through her hardened form, blood seeping from the blackened wounds inflicted by Naruto's cursed stage. Naruto took a slow step forward, his presence dominating the void. In his hand materialized a thin, white glowing thread, shimmering like a strand of moonlight yet carrying an undeniable sense of finality. Haruka's breaths came in sharp, ragged gasps as she looked up at him, her trembling body betraying her. She questioned what the thread was. Naruto's steps were deliberate and unhurried, his gaze cold and unwavering. He revealed that this was the final act, and the thread in his hand stretched and writhed like a living thing. With a flick of his wrist, the thread shot forward, wrapping around Haruka's throat like a rope. Her eyes widened as the glowing strand tightened, the sharp pull forcing her head to tilt slightly. She gritted her teeth, blood trickling from her lips as she clawed at the thread, her fingers unable to grasp its ethereal form. She wondered if this was how it would end. Naruto remained silent, his hand tightening as the thread began to glow brighter, digging deeper into her neck. Her struggles weakened as the glowing strand pulsed, each beat sapping the remaining strength from her body. She called him a monster, the abyss around them churning violently, reflecting the climax of the tragedy unfolding on its stage. Naruto's voice was low and mournful as he recited the final poem, speaking of the cruelty of a woman's mercy and the regret that entwined her lover. With a final, merciless pull, the thread snapped taut. For a moment, everything stood still. Then, with a sickening burst, her head was lost in a violent eruption. Her lifeless body collapsed, sinking into the abyss as if consumed by the very stage that had sealed her fate. The oppressive aura of the Bankai dissolved, the fractured sky above returning to its natural hue. The battlefield fell silent once more, the only sound the faint rustle of wind. Naruto stood alone, the weight of his actions heavy on his shoulders. He let the thread in his hand dissipate, its glow vanishing like the last remnants of a dying flame. He exhaled deeply, his voice quiet but final as he acknowledged the end of the performance. The battlefield was eerily quiet, save for the faint rustling of the wind sweeping through the aftermath of Naruto's Bankai. The heavy gloom had dissipated, leaving behind a haunting emptiness. Naruto stood motionless at the center of it all, his figure cast in stark relief against the desolate scene. His breathing was shallow and uneven, his body trembling under the immense strain of the final act. Slowly, he raised a hand to his face, adjusting his eye patch over his right eye. The single visible eye stared ahead, sharp and weary. Victory had been secured, but it felt hollow, as most victories in this cruel play often were. His gaze shifted, catching on a still form in the distance. Ryuji lay sprawled upon the ground, his body marred by the unmistakable remnants of Naruto's Bankai. The wounds from earlier were etched deeply into his skin, and his once vibrant figure now bore dark stains that disfigured the pallor of his body. The absence of his head left only a grim testament to the cruelty of the battle. The remnants of his struggle seemed to have been erased in an instant, the explosive power of Naruto's Bankai claiming yet another casualty. Naruto's jaw clenched tightly as he took it all in. The truth settled heavily upon him. He hadn't even realized Ryuji had been caught in the crossfire. He walked towards Ryuji, kneeling briefly, his gaze fixed on the broken form before him. His hand hovered over the man's chest, unsure whether to touch it or leave it be. Finally, he muttered under his breath, expressing his regret for what had happened. He closed his eye, bowing his head slightly in acknowledgement. For a brief moment, the air seemed to still, as though the world offered its own quiet respect for the fallen. But Naruto knew he couldn't linger. There was no solace to be found in this place. Rising slowly to his feet, he cast one last glance at Ryuji's remains before turning away. The stage had been dismantled, the curtain drawn, and yet the echoes of the performance would linger. As he began to walk away, his shadow stretched far behind him, a somber specter of the tragedy he carried with him. Far above, a drone hovered, its small frame cloaked in subtle, reflective plating that blended with the darkened sky. The faint hum of its rotors was imperceptible as it captured every detail of the battlefield below. Behind a sleek control panel in a hidden location, Kaido Yamamoto leaned back in his chair, his hand lazily spinning the joystick controlling the drone. His lips curved into a sly grin as the feed displayed Haruka's lifeless body. He adjusted the camera angle, zooming in on Ryuji's form, the dark marks dotting his skin. For a brief moment, his smile faltered, replaced by a shadow of something resembling regret. He reflected on Ryuji's fate, acknowledging that he had always thought he would go out in a blaze of glory, not like this. The camera panned back to Naruto, and Kaido gave a low, impressed whistle. He acknowledged Naruto's talent in taking down Kazuo and Haruka. For a moment, his fingers hesitated over the controls, as if debating whether to mourn his fallen comrades further. Instead, he chuckled quietly, shaking his head. Naruto was a dead man walking, unaware of what was coming for him. His tone shifted, colder now, as he leaned closer to the monitor, his grin returning. He warned Naruto to enjoy the moment, for once Shura learned of this, there wouldn't be a stage big enough for the tragedy she would bring. Kaido sat back, folding his hands behind his head as the drone feed continued its silent observation. As Naruto began to take a step forward, a rush of heat flooded through him. The red chakra of the nine tails surged outward, enveloping his battered frame. The wounds on his body began to close as Kurama's power restored his strength. Naruto chuckled weakly, expressing his gratitude. Kurama's tone softened, though it retained its gruff edge, reminding Naruto not to get too sentimental. The red chakra receded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Naruto standing tall once more. He flexed his hands, feeling the renewed strength coursing through him, and made his way back to his team. Naruto joined Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, and Kamen by the roadside, where they had regrouped after the chaotic battle. Guy had bandaged his forearm, still slightly bruised from his fight with Ryuji and the fierce exchanges with Haruka alongside Kakashi. Despite the physical strain, his usual energy seemed undiminished as he gave Naruto a thumbs up. Kakashi broke the tense silence, calmly urging Naruto to share what was really going on. Those assassins were not random bandits. They were far too coordinated and well-equipped. The question lingered in the air: who would go to such lengths to kill him? Kamen hesitated, shifting uncomfortably under Kakashi's intense gaze. He explained that Yugure was different from other places. There was peace, but it was fragile, and people resented it. Kurenai's eyes narrowed as she questioned why anyone would be against stability and prosperity. Kamen swallowed hard, nervously clutching his torn robe. He revealed that Yugure had changed under Fujimoto's leadership. The village, once a stronghold of ninjas, had transformed into a tourist haven. People visited for the hot springs and festivals, not for war. Naruto frowned, trying to understand. Kamen nodded, affirming that the factions hated this change with a passion. Rogue clans and Jashinis viewed Fujimoto as a traitor to Yugure's identity, believing he had turned a village of warriors into a peaceful retreat. Kakashi leaned forward, narrowing his single visible eye. He questioned why anyone would challenge such a powerful man. Kamen let out a bitter chuckle, lacking humor, and explained that it was precisely Fujimoto's strength that fueled their resentment. Instead of conquering, he chose to protect, which they saw as weakness. Kamen's voice grew steadier as he expressed his frustration. Fujimoto stood watch over Yugure like an unshakable wall, shielding the village and its people from war. However, to the factions, this made him weak, a man unwilling to seize power and restore Yugure to what they believed it once was. Kurenai's voice was cold and perceptive as she pointed out that these factions viewed merchants like Kamen as part of the problem. They represented the new Yugure, focused on trade and tourism rather than war. Kamen flinched but acknowledged this truth. To them, he was a parasite benefiting from Fujimoto's peace, and they believed that destroying the merchants would lead to the collapse of everything Fujimoto had built. Naruto's voice cut through the tension, sharp and unwavering. He clarified that they resented peace because it prevented them from fighting. They hated a man who used his strength to protect others instead of conquering, and they were willing to harm innocent people to make their point. Kamen looked up, struck by the intensity of Naruto's gaze, and confirmed that this was indeed the case. Peace had transformed Yugure into a village they no longer recognized, and Fujimoto was doing what a true leader should, protecting his people, which did not equate to weakness. The group fell silent, with Kakashi observing Naruto carefully, noting the tension in his shoulders and the fire in his gaze. He remarked that Fujimoto's peace had made Yugure a target for those who thrived in war, and the attacks would persist as long as the factions believed they could destabilize the village. Kamen bowed his head, shame evident in his posture. He expressed regret for causing trouble, believing he could make the trip quietly without drawing attention. He had not realized how bold the factions had become. Guy crossed his arms, his normally upbeat tone taking on a somber edge, reminding them that even in times of peace, the seeds of discord could remain. As they prepared to continue their journey, Kurama growled softly in Naruto's mind, expressing disdain for those who clung to destruction. In an unknown location, the remaining core members of Kurikage gathered in a dimly lit chamber. A holographic projection displayed footage from Kaido's drone, capturing Naruto's battles with Kazuo and Haruka. Yuki Fukunaga smirked, leaning against a wall with his arms crossed. He acknowledged that the kid was impressive for taking down Haruka, one of their best. Tetsuya Okabe laughed wildly, exposing sharp teeth as he declared that the runt was merely prey waiting for the hunt, vowing to crush him next time. Isamu Nishimura remained calm, his tone cold and calculating as he warned against underestimating Naruto. He noted that Naruto was dangerous not because of his strength, but due to his unpredictability. He had defeated Kazuo and Haruka because they had underestimated him. Shura Mizuki glared at the monitor, her expression icy as she tapped rhythmically against the armrest of her chair, suppressing her growing fury. Finally, she spoke calmly but with deadly intent, declaring that she would finish the job herself. Naruto Namikaze would die by her hand. Kaido leaned back in his chair, smirking as he toyed with a kunai. He cautioned Shura that while she might defeat Naruto with some difficulty, Fujimoto was on another level. If she started trouble in Yugure, he would retaliate, and she did not want him as an enemy. Shura's crimson eyes narrowed dangerously as she dismissed Kaido's concerns. She was unafraid of Fujimoto, stating that if he dared to interfere, she would destroy them both, Naruto and Fujimoto. Nothing would stand in her way. Her gaze returned to the monitor, lingering on Naruto's image as she murmured his name, her tone laced with intrigue and malice. The towering gates of Yugure loomed ahead as Naruto, Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, and Kamen approached. The guards stationed at the entrance stood tall, their gray uniforms bearing the insignia of a steaming spring, a symbol of the village's identity. One of the guards stepped forward, bowing deeply as he recognized Kamen. Relief softened his stern expression as he glanced at Kamen's disheveled state. Kamen smiled weakly, though exhaustion was evident in his eyes, acknowledging that they had finally made it. The guard's gaze swept over the group before settling on the empty space behind Kamen, prompting him to inquire about Kamen's men. The somber silence that followed spoke volumes. The guard stiffened, lowering his head in silent acknowledgement before turning to the Konoha Nin with gratitude, thanking them for protecting Lord Kamen. Kakashi waved lazily, indicating that it was all part of the job. Guy, despite his injuries, struck a proud pose, proclaiming that the youthful flames of Konoha burned brightest when protecting others. Naruto sighed, shaking his head, suggesting that it had not been an easy journey. Kurenai remained composed, her crimson eyes scanning their surroundings as she asked if the village was secure. The guard confirmed that it was, stating that no troublemakers would dare act with Fujimoto present. As the gates opened, the group stepped inside, and Naruto's single eye widened slightly at the sight before him. Yugure was a village unlike any other. The air was thick with the pleasant scent of steam and mineral-rich water, carried on a gentle breeze. Narrow cobblestone streets wound through the village, bordered by elegant wooden buildings with tiled roofs. Lanterns adorned with intricate designs hung from beams, casting warm, golden light over the pathways. Streams of crystal-clear water flowed alongside the streets, bubbling softly as they fed into small fountains and canals. Visitors bustled about, their laughter and conversation blending with the soothing sound of the springs. Stalls lined the roads, selling everything from handcrafted pottery to local delicacies. The group passed a bustling market where merchants proudly displayed their wares. A vendor called out, offering steaming bowls of onsen tamago and fresh fish skewers. Children played by the streams, their giggles filling the air as they splashed each other. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the peaceful scene, noting that this was Yugure. It was nice. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in amusement, acknowledging the charm of the tourist haven. Guy inhaled deeply, his chest swelling with enthusiasm as he expressed his admiration for the rejuvenating energy of the village. Kurenai glanced at Naruto, observing how his gaze lingered on the happy villagers, and for a moment, she saw the tension in his shoulders ease. Kamen's estate was a grand structure perched on a hillside, overlooking the village. Its garden was meticulously maintained, with koi ponds and stone lanterns dotting the landscape. Servants greeted them at the entrance, bowing low as Kamen and his protectors entered. With their mission complete, Kamen handed over a heavy pouch of Ryo to Kakashi, expressing his gratitude for their assistance. Kakashi accepted it with a polite nod, pleased to have worked with Lord Kamen. However, Naruto tilted his head, expressing concern for Kamen's safety. Kamen offered a tired smile, reassuring Naruto that the troublemakers were bold but not foolish enough to challenge Fujimoto-sama's authority. With that, Naruto grinned, feeling relieved that they could relax and explore what Yugure had to offer. Eager to unwind, Naruto ventured out alone. He wandered through the vibrant streets, sampling the local cuisine and admiring the village's unique charm. A small ramen shop caught his eye, and he couldn't resist stopping for a bowl. The rich, savory broth warmed him from the inside out. Eventually, Naruto found himself at one of the village's famous hot springs. The wooden entrance was adorned with painted screens depicting serene landscapes. His eye gleamed mischievously as he noticed the sign for mixed bathing, and he thought it would be fun to slip inside. The hot spring was a tranquil paradise, with steam rising from the bubbling water and mingling with the soft glow of lanterns. Rocks and lush greenery surrounded the pools, creating an NTMT, natural setting. Naruto leaned back against the edge of the spring, letting out a relaxed sigh as he sank into the warm water, the tension melting away. A lazy grin spread across his face when he heard the soft murmur of voices nearby. On his way back to Kamen's estate, Naruto strolled through the dimly lit streets, the soft glow of lanterns bathing the cobblestone paths in warm light. As he turned a corner, he collided with someone. He quickly apologized and looked up to see a breathtaking woman. Her long, raven-black hair cascaded down her back like silk, framing her striking features. Her sharp, vivid eyes glowed like molten gold, a captivating contrast against her porcelain skin. High cheekbones, full lips, and an elegant jawline gave her an otherworldly allure. She wore a sleek black kimono with crimson accents, adorned with intricate patterns resembling blooming roses entangled with thorny vines, exuding both elegance and danger. The woman smiled politely, assuring him that there was no need to apologize. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, feeling sheepish as he introduced himself. She tilted her head, her smile faintly amused, and revealed her name was Shura. Naruto's grin turned playful as he complimented her beauty, but Shura chuckled softly, noting that he might be a bit young for such comments. Naruto shrugged, insisting he called it as he saw it, unable to resist trying to charm her. Shura's expression remained kind, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something darker. Kurama's voice echoed in Naruto's mind, warning him to be careful, as this woman radiated hostility. Naruto stiffened slightly but forced a smile, bidding her farewell. As he turned to leave, Shura's voice dropped ominously, suggesting he wouldn't see her again. Naruto's instincts screamed as he felt the air shift. He spun around, drawing one of his blades just in time to block a powerful punch aimed at his back. The clash sent a shockwave rippling through the street. Shura's attacks came like an unending storm, each punch and kick carrying immense force. Naruto's blade met her strikes head-on, the impact creating shockwaves that rattled the air. The force sent jolts of pain up his arm, but he stood firm. He grunted as he narrowly ducked under a high kick, countering with a quick move of his blade, but Shura twisted in midair. Her retaliation was swift, unleashing a volley of dark, pulsing orbs that screamed through the battlefield, targeting the panicked villagers. Naruto's heart dropped as he realized her intent. Without hesitation, he vanished in a blur, reappearing between the civilians and the deadly projectiles. His blades flashed in rapid succession, deflecting the orbs with precise strikes. Each impact sent rippling force through his arms, but he gritted his teeth and held his ground, urging the villagers to flee. They hesitated, fear rooting them in place, but another barrage of orbs left them scrambling. When one villager tripped, Naruto dashed to intercept a projectile headed their way, slashing it mid-flight. The resulting explosion sent dirt and debris flying, but he stood firm, shielding the fallen civilian. He barked at them to get up and move, pulling them to their feet and urging them to escape. The villagers stammered a thank you and bolted toward safety, but Naruto didn't have a chance to watch them leave. Shura appeared above him in an instant, her leg descending like a hammer. He raised his blades just in time to block her kick, the force sending him crashing into the ground, leaving a crater beneath him. Rolling out of the way as she followed up with another gravity-infused stomp, he narrowly avoided being crushed. Shura mocked him, suggesting he was wasting his energy on the villagers, calling them weak. But Naruto shot her a glare as he climbed back to his feet, his voice steady and unwavering even as he struggled to catch his breath. He insisted that if she wanted to fight him, she should leave the villagers out of it. Shura's lips curved into a cruel smile, hinting at the challenge ahead. Then they decided to make things more interesting. She extended both arms, summoning a swirling mass of gravitational energy. The air around her warped and shimmered, and suddenly, chunks of the already damaged buildings and shattered ground began to rise into the air. She hurled the debris toward the fleeing villagers like meteors, the sheer velocity threatening to obliterate everything in their path. Naruto cursed under his breath and sprang into action. He intercepted the first chunk with a spinning slash, his blade cutting cleanly through the mass. The second piece came down faster, forcing him to leap high into the air to meet it. His blades crossed as he struck, shattering the debris into harmless fragments. But there were too many. The relentless assault of rubble and dark orbs was overwhelming, and Naruto could feel the strain creeping into his movements. A jagged boulder slipped past his defenses, hurtling toward a mother clutching her child. Naruto's eyes widened, determined to protect them. He vanished with Shuinpa, appearing in front of them just in time. His blade swung upward, cleaving the boulder in two, the halves crashing harmlessly to the sides. He urged them to keep moving, not sparing a glance as he turned back to face Shura. The villagers were finally clear, but Shura was already closing in, her fist glowing with condensed gravitational energy. She struck with terrifying force, and Naruto barely managed to parry. The impact sent him skidding backward, his feet digging trenches into the ground. He let out a deep sigh, recognizing the weight of the situation. He mentioned that she must be connected to those who attacked Kamen. Shura's eyes narrowed in response. He explained that he had offered them a peaceful way out, but they had refused, and that was on them. Shura's voice turned cold as she expressed her grief, stating that while she didn't blame him for their deaths, they had been dear to her. Naruto's gaze softened for a moment, understanding her pain. But Shura cut him off, telling him to save his pity. A massive black hole materialized in the sky, its gravitational pull threatening to consume everything. Naruto braced himself, ready to act, but before he could, a flaming slash tore through the air, destroying the black hole in an instant. He turned, breath catching in his throat as he recognized the figure before him. It was Genriusai Shigekuni Yamamoto, now known as Fujimoto, the leader of Yugure. He acknowledged Naruto, referring to him as his son, and noted that he was still as reckless and lazy as ever. Naruto smiled through his tears, feeling a mix of joy and nostalgia. Shura's eyes narrowed as she launched another dark orb, but Genriusai effortlessly sliced through it with another flaming strike. She sneered, declaring that she would cut their reunion short and that they both had to die. With a surge of power, she increased the gravity in the area, forcing Naruto and Genriusai to their knees. Genriusai released a burst of Ryatsu that shattered her hold, and Naruto followed suit, his own energy flaring to life. Genriusai instructed Naruto to create a barrier, stating he would handle Shura himself. Naruto smirked, eager to see his mentor in action, and Genriusai's eyes burned with determination as he declared that those who disrupted the peace of Yugure would be turned to ash. Shura smirked confidently, challenging him to bring it on, while Naruto chuckled, confident in their chances. As the battle commenced, Shura struck first, unleashing a flurry of shadowed projectiles that streaked toward Genriusai with devastating speed. With a single motion, Genriusai swung Ryujin Jaka, a wave of fire erupting from the blade. The flames met the spears midair, incinerating them instantly, causing the stone beneath to bubble and melt. Seizing an opening, Genriusai delivered a powerful punch that sent Shura flying, crashing through several walls before she emerged from the wreckage, coughing but far from defeated. She declared that he was not bad and challenged him to see how he would handle her next move. Shura surged forward, amplifying her speed and strength. She closed the distance in a blink, her fists coated in dark energy as she unleashed a barrage of strikes. Genriusai moved like a storm, intercepting every punch with precise movements. Each clash sent shockwaves through the street, shattering nearby structures. He remarked on her impressive skills but asserted that fire reduces all things to ash. With a wide arc of his sword, flames erupted outward in a devastating wave. Shura leapt back, raising her hands to amplify the gravity in the space between them, warping the flames and shifting their trajectory harmlessly to the sides. The gravity around Genriusai intensified, crushing the street beneath him into rubble and forcing the surrounding structures to groan under the strain. Naruto, watching from his barrier, felt the oppressive weight even from a distance. He urged Genriusai not to let Shura show him up. Genriusai remained standing, his feet firmly planted as he tightened his grip on Ryujin Jaka, countering the immense pressure with his spiritual energy. He declared that her tricks meant nothing to him and stepped forward as if the crushing gravity was mere child's play. Shura's smirk faltered as she doubled the weight of her technique, causing the ground beneath Genriusai to crater. Yet he remained unaffected. With a sharp glare, he slashed his sword upward, dispelling the gravity entirely with a burst of flames. Shura raised both hands, summoning a swirling black orb of immense power. The air around it warped violently, the ground cracking and rising into the vortex. With a flick of her wrist, she hurled it at Genriusai, the singularity growing larger as it moved. Genriusai stood firm, not flinching as he called forth flames that erupted around him, forming a massive sphere of fire. The singularity collided with the inferno, the two forces battling for dominance as space distorted violently. Genriusai raised Ryujin Jaka and sliced downward, his flames surging forward. The singularity shattered, its fragments scattering harmlessly into the sky. Genriusai stepped forward, his blade glowing with renewed heat, believing that no tricks could surpass the flames of hell itself. Shura lunged forward again, utilizing heavy infighting. Her punches came faster and harder, enhanced by gravity, making each blow feel like a mountain falling. Genriusai met her head-on, Ryujin Jaka blocking and parrying with deadly efficiency. Each clash of fist and blade sent shockwaves rippling outward, the heat of Genriusai's flames beginning to singe Shura's skin despite her enhanced durability. She gritted her teeth, refusing to relent. Spotting an opening, she drove her foot into the ground, summoning Evil God's pressure craft. A massive chunk of earth rose beneath her, rapidly compressed into a gigantic sword through gravitational pressure. With a flick of her hand, the sword flew toward Genriusai at incredible speed. Genriusai narrowed his eyes, stepping aside as the sword streaked past him. Raising his blade, he unleashed Tamatsu, a wave of fire so immense it swallowed the sword entirely, reducing it to ash. Shura's voice echoed unnaturally as shadows coiled outward, a dark aura latching onto Genriusai's form, creeping toward his mind. For the first time, Shura's smirk widened, believing that even the strongest could break. Yet Genriusai's flame didn't waver. His eyes blazed as he declared that her will could not conquer his. The flames around him surged, incinerating the dark aura in an instant. The pressure of his Reiatsu shattered Shura's mental assault, forcing her to stumble backward. Genriusai warned her that she had overstepped, igniting Ryujin-jaka anew. Flames spiraled upward as 7 massive pillars erupted around Shura, encasing her completely. He unleashed Enetsu Jigaku, the flames closing inward like a collapsing sun, overwhelming even the gravity Shura tried to impose. She roared defiantly, releasing Dark Release, Black Hole Abyss at full power. A monstrous vortex erupted, pulling at the flames, the ground, and even the air itself. The black hole and the flames warred violently, space distorting as both forces clashed in the center of the battlefield. Genriusai didn't falter. Stepping into the maelstrom, he raised Ryujin-jaka high, his movements deliberate and final. With a single downward slash, the flames burst outward in a blinding torrent, consuming the black hole entirely and crashing into Shura like the judgment of a god. The inferno rose into the heavens, its brilliance visible for miles. When the flames finally receded, the battlefield fell silent. Shura lay sprawled on the scorched earth, smoke rising from her battered body, her limbs trembling as she gasped for breath. Genriusai stood over her, Ryujin-jaka resting against his shoulder, its flames finally dimming. He acknowledged her commendable strength but stated that his flames burned away all hubris. Shura coughed weakly, a half-smile tugging at her lips, acknowledging the strength of the legendary flame before falling unconscious. Genriusai turned, already walking away as his flames extinguished completely, remarking that she fought bravely and should take solace in that. As the dust settled, Naruto's barrier dropped, and he landed nearby, whistling softly at the destruction, impressed as ever. Kakashi stood near the estate's balcony, his gaze fixed on the faint glow of fire in the distance. Beside him, Kurenai and Guy exchanged uneasy glances. The air felt heavy, as if the very world held its breath. Kurenai noted that it was no ordinary battle, feeling the intensity from afar. Guy, ever the optimist, remarked on the fiery display of youth, believing whoever was involved must be giving it their all. Kamen approached, calm but firm, assuring them that Fujimoto-sama was handling the situation. Kakashi nodded, reassured by Kamen's confidence, and mentioned that if even half of what was said about Genriusai was true, it would be resolved quickly. Guy's grin widened, expressing his eagerness to meet Fujimoto-sama and challenge his fiery spirit, while Kurenai hoped it wouldn't come to that for everyone's sake. Later, Naruto lowered the barrier, brushing away the sweat on his brow as he surveyed the battlefield. The lingering heat from Genriusai's flames had left scorch marks that marred the ground. He let out a low whistle of admiration, acknowledging that the old man hadn't lost his touch. In the shadows, Kaito observed silently, having followed Shura without her knowledge and witnessed the entire battle. His sharp gaze lingered on Genriusai's imposing figure before darting to Shura's battered form, thinking that the old man was not someone to mess with. A sudden shift in the air signaled Kaito's move as he caused a distraction, an explosion of smoke that filled the battlefield, concealing everything in a suffocating cloud. When the smoke cleared, Shura was gone. Naruto frowned, rubbing his temple, realizing she would likely come after him again, which he was not looking forward to. Genriusai sheathed Ryujin-jaka, his expression impassive, and addressed Shunsui, indicating they had much to discuss after a great deal of time had passed since their last meeting. Naruto blinked, then broke into a wide grin, sparkling with genuine joy as he expressed his excitement to share everything with the old man. Later, the two sat together in a quiet corner of the estate. The tension of the battle had faded, replaced by a sense of calm as they exchanged stories of their lives. Naruto leaned back, resting his hands behind his head as he recounted the events following Genriusai's death. He mentioned that they had won the war against the Quincy, with Ichigo being the key to defeating Yaoshi. Genriusai's expression darkened slightly, his pride visibly wounded at the mention of Ichigo. Naruto noted that Ichigo was strong, suggesting that sometimes it takes an outsider to shift the tides. Genriusai acknowledged this, though his dissatisfaction remained, expressing concern that the Godai 13 were meant to be guardians of balance, not dependents on a substitute Shinigami. Naruto shrugged, suggesting that even the strongest sometimes need a hand. He then shifted the focus, asking Genriusai about life in Yugure, noting the significance of his title as leader. Genriusai's tone softened, tinged with faint pride as he explained that the world was different now. The chaos was relentless, but he had brought stability to Yugure, making it a sanctuary for those seeking peace. Naruto reflected on the alliances he had forged and the conflicts he had quelled, acknowledging the challenges that came with them. He smiled at Genriusai, recognizing the stability of Yugure. It was one of the most secure villages, which was no small feat. Genriusai's gaze remained steady, his voice calm yet curious as he inquired about Shuinsue's life. He asked if Shunsui had found peace in the world he had built. Naruto leaned back, a thoughtful smile gracing his lips as he considered the question. He admitted that peace was a complex concept for him. In the Leaf Village, many people did not trust him. Being a jinchūriki did not earn him any popularity. He often felt the weight of their judgment, seen as merely a monster carrying the 9 tails. Despite this, Naruto felt fortunate. He had a family that loved him, who had chosen to accept him without reservation. They treated him as if he belonged, not just as a burden. His friends Ino, Choji, Kiba, and others had always supported him. Although life was not perfect, their presence grounded him and made him feel less alone. He owed them more than he could express. Naruto looked back at Genriusai, his gaze steady. While the Leaf Village might not trust him, he had his family and friends, which was enough to keep him moving forward. Genriusai nodded slowly, his expression unreadable but warm, reminding Shunsui that a man's strength often came from those beside him and that he should treasure them as they were his foundation. Naruto grinned, acknowledging that he would be lost without them. In a distant part of the world, Shura leaned against a tree, her body weary and her breaths labored. Kaito crouched nearby, his sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. He casually remarked that Shura should have been more careful, noting that the old man was not someone to underestimate. Shura scowled, though her exhaustion dulled her glare, and she acknowledged Kaito's point. Kaito smirked, leaning back against the tree, assuring her that next time, she would be ready, and he would be right there with her. Shura's scowl softened into a faint smirk as she declared that next time, she wouldn't lose. Kaito chuckled, teasing that they would see about that. As they vanished into the shadows, the remnants of the battlefield cooled, but the air was thick with the promise of future confrontations. Kamen strode confidently toward Genriusai's estate, followed by Kakashi, Guy, and Kurenai. The serene streets of Yugure felt far removed from the chaos they had recently faced, yet a subtle tension lingered. Upon reaching the entrance, Kakashi's visible eye widened slightly at the sight of Naruto seated cross-legged with Genriusai, both enjoying sake as if they were old friends. Naruto's characteristic grin suggested he was entirely at ease. Kakashi muttered Naruto's name in disbelief. Genriusai rose slowly, his commanding presence filling the space as he welcomed Kamen back home. Kamen bowed deeply, expressing his gratitude. Kakashi, Guy, and Kurenai exchanged glances before stepping forward to offer polite bows, acknowledging Genriusai with respect. Genriusai waved dismissively, encouraging them to relax as guests in his home. Kakashi straightened, his attention returning to Naruto, who still wore a sly grin. Kakashi half-scolded Naruto, questioning what he was doing there. Naruto stretched lazily, setting his cup down, and began to explain, carefully omitting the deeper connection between himself and Genriusai. He recounted how the leader of their recent adversaries, Haruka, Ruji, and Kazuo, had come after him. Though she had been tough, Genriusai had managed to handle her even if she had escaped. Before Kakashi could respond, Genriusai interjected, stating that Naruto had potential and that he had decided to mentor him. Kamen nodded approvingly, affirming that Naruto was in the best hands possible. Genriusai then motioned for Kamen to follow him, pausing at the doorway to invite the others to make themselves at home. As the two men departed, the atmosphere relaxed slightly. Still feeling the effects of his drinks with Genriusai, Naruto was in high spirits as he turned to Kurenai. He leaned back in his chair, grinning confidently, and remarked on her serious demeanor. Kurenai raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet skeptical, and challenged him. Naruto leaned forward, suggesting that if she let loose occasionally, they might get along better. He believed that a little fun could work wonders. Kurenai's lips curled into a smile, but her gaze remained firm as she stated that it would take more than charm and drinks to get her to loosen up. Undeterred, Naruto laughed and accepted her response, acknowledging it was worth a shot. Kurenai chuckled, shaking her head, calling him a handful. Kakashi, observing from the side, let out a quiet laugh, teasing that Yoshino would be upset if she found out about Naruto's antics. Panic washed over Naruto as he pleaded with Kakashi not to tell her, fearing for his safety. Kakashi stroked his chin thoughtfully, hinting that he might keep it a secret but would expect a favor in return. Naruto dramatically slouched in his seat, calling Kakashi a traitor for not supporting him. The next morning, while Kakashi, Guy, and Kurenai explored Yugure, Naruto and Genriusai engaged in a sparring match in the estate's courtyard. The clash of their training weapons echoed as they moved with incredible speed and precision. Naruto's shadow constructs lashed out unpredictably, but Genriusai countered each one with masterful ease. He scolded Naruto for relying too much on tricks, emphasizing the need for discipline alongside his sharp instincts. Naruto grinned, sweat dripping down his brow, playfully lamenting that Genriusai was making him look bad. With a swift motion, Genriusai disarmed Naruto, reminding him to work harder. Despite panting heavily, Naruto's grin remained, acknowledging that Genriusai still had it. Genriusai acknowledged the situation with a nod, noting the need for improvement. As the departure time drew near, Kamen stood at the gates of his estate alongside Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, and Naruto. His demeanor was calm, yet his gratitude was evident. He expressed his appreciation for their invaluable protection, bowing slightly as he spoke. Kakashi responded with a smile, indicating that it was their duty and that no thanks were necessary. Naruto, ever cheerful, reassured him that it was just another day for their awesome team. Kurenai playfully reminded Naruto to stay out of trouble and perhaps avoid the sake next time. Naruto laughed, promising no such thing. Kamen nodded appreciatively to each of them, vowing to remember their kindness and the trust they had earned. The group then turned to make their way back to Konoha, leaving Yugure behind. The journey back to Konoha was peaceful and uneventful, a welcome change from the chaos they had experienced in Yugure. As they passed through the village gates, Naruto stretched, feeling the lingering soreness from their recent battles. Soon after their return, the team was summoned to the Hokage's office to report on their mission. Hiruzen sat behind his desk, his expression serious as he listened to their account. Kakashi, Guy, Kurenai, and Naruto stood before him, the latter appearing somewhat disinterested. Kakashi initiated the briefing, outlining their encounter with three formidable shinobi, Haruka, Ruji, and Kazuo. He explained that they had left Kurenai to guard Kamen while they split up to confront the enemy. Naruto interjected, casually mentioning his encounter with Kazuo and how they had engaged in a few games during their confrontation. Kurenai raised an eyebrow, questioning the nature of these games, while Guy expressed surprise that such distractions could occur in battle. Naruto merely smirked, claiming it was a secret technique. Guy continued, describing his fight with Ruji, who was a remarkable taijutsu specialist capable of hardening his body. He expressed admiration for Ruji as a worthy opponent, only for Naruto to awkwardly reveal that Ruji had perished during the conflict. Guy was taken aback, visibly saddened by the loss of his rival. Kakashi's expression shifted as he noted that Naruto had managed to defeat Haruka, a formidable foe who had previously given him and Guy significant trouble. Naruto explained that he had to resort to a more powerful technique, one that was beyond mere games, to secure victory. Hiruzen leaned in, intrigued by the mention of a mysterious old man who had come to Naruto's aid during the battle. Naruto identified him as Genriusai Fujimoto, a figure Hiruzen remembered well from the past, known for his immense strength and the respect he commanded from other nations. Kakashi added that Genriusai had taken Naruto as his student, recognizing his potential. Naruto confirmed his plans to return to Yugure soon for training under Genriusai. Hiruzen commended the team for their efforts, particularly Kakashi for his foresight in bringing Naruto along. Later, Naruto returned to the Nara compound, greeted by the comforting aroma of lunch and the sight of familiar faces. Shikamaru, Asuma, Choji, and Ino were gathered outside, enjoying skewers. They welcomed him back with cheerful greetings. Naruto dramatically slumped down beside them, claiming exhaustion from the mission and joking about carrying his teammates. Ino teased him, doubting his ability to carry anyone, but Naruto merely chuckled in response before heading inside to rest. At dinner, the Nara family gathered around the table, and Naruto recounted the mission to Shikaku and Yoshino, omitting any grim details. He assured them that Kamen was safe and that he would soon be training under Genriusai. Shikaku expressed admiration for the opportunity, while Yoshino expressed her relief at Naruto's safe return. Shikamaru, with a rice ball in hand, humorously warned Naruto to avoid breaking anything valuable during his training, including his bones. Naruto grinned, and the room filled with laughter and warmth. The streets of Konoha were alive with activity as Naruto strolled through, hands behind his head and a carefree grin on his face. His expression brightened when he spotted Sasuke and Sakura ahead. He called out to them, and while Sakura greeted him with surprise, Sasuke's demeanor sharpened. Naruto approached, excitedly announcing his return from a high-profile mission. Sakura eagerly inquired about the details, but Sasuke, impatient, urged him to get to the point. Naruto feigned realization and teased Sasuke about their previous D-rank missions. Sasuke's frustration grew, but before he could respond, Naruto vanished in a burst of speed, leaving only a swirl of dust behind. Sasuke clenched his fists, frustration simmering within him. First, he had been shown up during the bell test. Now Naruto was out completing high-level missions. He ground his teeth together, feeling a simmering rage beneath the surface as he realized he was falling behind. A few days later, Naruto stood at the outskirts of the Fire Country, facing the long road to Yugure. He knew it wouldn't take long. With a smirk, he vanished, using Shunpa to carry him swiftly across rivers, forests, and mountains. Yugure welcomed him with a calm serenity that was unique to the village. Between training sessions with Genriusai, Naruto took full advantage of the village's renowned hot springs, gourmet food, and scenic views. The contrast between leisure and the grueling spars was jarring, but he embraced both fully. Each evening, the training grew more intense. Genriusai spared no mercy. His strikes were heavy, his footwork flawless, and his spiritual pressure enough to make even experienced shinobi stagger. Naruto fought back fiercely, relying on instinct, Shunpa, and his Zanpakudos. Tricks to keep up, but the old man always held the upper hand. On the final evening of his training, the two sat on a wooden porch under a moonlit sky, a gentle breeze rustling the trees around them. A small sake bottle sat between them, already half empty. Genriusai took a slow sip and glanced at Naruto, acknowledging his growth in strength. Naruto leaned back with a satisfied sigh, admitting he still couldn't land a clean hit on the old man. Genriusai chuckled, noting that not many could. A comfortable silence settled before he spoke again, revealing that Retsu, Jin, and Jushiro were also in this world. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, expressing his excitement about Retsu and Jushiro being there. Genriusai mentioned that Jin was not causing trouble and was actually considered a hero in Kirigakure. Naruto nearly spat out his drink in disbelief, finding it amusing that Jin had earned such a title. Genriusai explained that Jin had helped liberate Kiri during the fall of Yugure's regime, earning the village's gratitude. Naruto shook his head in amusement, acknowledging that even when Jin did good, it had mischief written all over it. His tone softened as he inquired about Jushiro's well-being. Genriusai confirmed that Jushiro was in Kumogakure but was not as sick as before. Naruto felt a shadow fall over his face, relieved yet concerned, expressing his hope to see Jushiro soon. Genriusai assured him he would, in 4 months, during the next Chunin exams to be held in Kumogakure. Naruto's surprise quickly transformed into a determined smile, realizing he now had a reason to participate in the exam. Genriusai smirked, cautioning him not to get cocky. Naruto chuckled, playfully responding that he could make no promises. They drank in silence for a while longer, the night peaceful and full of quiet possibilities.